Perfect. Hello and welcome to Warcraft Reloaded, a podcast brought to you by Mash Those Buttons, covering World of Warcraft Classic and its community. I am Bobby, also known as Blazin' Bob, and as usual, I'm joined by Mel, aka Melarina. How you doing?
Hi, I'm good.
Good to hear. And returning to the show favorite as a rogue player, SimonizeShow. How you doing?
Well, thank you for having me back. I enjoyed it the first time. I'm happy to be back. I am doing well. I've been having a blast with Ulduar. I'm playing 3 different rogues. Can't get enough.
That's awesome. Wow. That's awesome. I still have a gifted boost from Blizzard, and I keep thinking, I don't really want to play a different. And like, I love my warrior. I love my rogue. I don't really want to play something else. Well, maybe I will make another rogue.
I'd say for my favorite non-rogue, Frost DK is pretty fun. I really like that class. You know, it's melee, so you deal with all the same mechanics. You don't have to relearn any of the bosses, really. But that one's pretty satisfying to play, too.
Yeah, I'm enjoying Prot Warrior just because there's so many buttons to push. And, you know, it's a challenge to show people that I can still do the raids just a different way. And it's been pretty cool. But yeah, Rogue's definitely hands down favorite, like by far.
Love to hear it.
All right, guys. The show is going to consist of today. We're going to be, going over some voicemails. We got quite a few. We asked you guys. We didn't have any last week. We asked you guys to send some in. You came through. We might not even get through all of them that came in, but we're going to try. We're going to talk about a little bit of what we've been doing lately. Then there's a pre-recorded segment with Yip talking about our progression on hard modes and Mimiron and different things, and that'll be in there. And then we'll go to news, and then we're going to talk rogue stuff with Simonize. So anybody watching live, you will not see the progression segment. You'll have to check it out later. But yeah. All right. I'd like to start the show by thanking our tank Patreons in Thick Lizzie, Croxford, Braxton, and Turtle Whale. Thank you guys for your support. And anybody that wants to support us can do so at patreon.com/Warcraft Reloaded. Also like to remind everybody we do the show live on Twitch at twitch.tv/BlazinBob. That's BlazinBob. If you want to ever check that out. And you can follow us on Twitter at WC Reloaded if you want to know when we go live. All right, so we're going to get started with the voicemails. We had some pretty fun ones this week, so we're going to start on those. Anybody who wants to call in, you can do so by calling 816-866-1066, or you can go to speakpipe.com/Warcraft Reloaded. And that's where you can leave whatever you want. And the website works overseas too. But if you're in your car in the States, give us a call. All right, let's go ahead and go with the first one. And this comes from another podcaster, Mere Casuals, who I shouted out last week. Wanted to clarify that when I said you won't learn anything, but you'll be entertained, I misspoke. I meant you won't learn like high-end boss strategies, but like you'll still learn things. It's just more comedy based and stuff. But here's what the host sent in to us today.
Hey, Bob and Mel and guest. This is Josh from the Mere Casuals podcast calling. Today I'm calling not as a podcast host or as an avid listener and fan of your show, but as a main spec Ret Paladin. I felt the need to speak up and stand up for my spec. I feel like we get some disrespect from the WoW community. We have been at the bottom of DPS for a long time, and I get the feeling that everyone else wants nothing more than to keep us down. But you have an S-tier tank spec and an S-tier heal spec, people will say. But I don't main a healer or a tank. I'm a Ret Paladin. I choose my class and spec because I enjoy it. But Paladins, the bottom basement of reasonable DPS specs, Frost BM, Subtlety, and Arms, you just shush, we're not talking to you. Paladins get a buff, and what have I been hearing for 2 weeks? Oh, great, now Ret Paladins are going to actually want to be included in raids. Oh no, what if this buff means they end up actually being good down the road? I hear suggestions that Hand of Reckoning should actually be added to the GCD. Well, then it wouldn't be a DPS buff anymore because it would just bump another spell down the rotation. Why not just let us have some fun? This is a rehash of decades-old content. Why do you all care that a Ret Paladin is still doing less DPS than you, but not by quite as wide a margin? Okay, well, now that I've gotten that out of my system, who do I talk to about getting Fury Warriors nerfed? I want Shadowmourne, and I'm not sharing with one of those people. Anyways, thanks for taking my voicemail. Bye.
I like this guy.
Yep, dude, it's a great podcast. They have some great wit. It's, you know, like he's actually pretty, like he knows a lot about the game, but the other two are kind of learning and coming all along, and it's a fun process to listen to at a good time. But I'll just say right out the start, and you know, we'll answer you for real, but just because of, you know, the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl and everything else, Travis Kelce, if anybody watches that, having his little speech to the mayor, I'm going to tell you, Ret Pallies, know your role and stay in your lane, jabroni.
Oh, God.
Because, yeah, you're a Ret Paladin. You're supposed to be a meme. That's been the way it was since 2004, right?
Oh, gosh.
I don't know.
I've heard talk of a lot of like actually really competitive teams putting a Ret Paladin in, not for their individual damage output, but because they bring a lot of utility. Like they're a good source of the 3% damage buff that you only get that from Arcane Mage or Beast Mastery Hunter. Arcane Mage is fine, but it's like if you can get it from the Ret Paladin, then your mages can go fire or whatever they want to do. You get a Paladin buff, you get an extra Hand of Sacrifice, Blessing of Protection, an extra, if they spec into it, they get an extra that, I don't know what it's called, Raid Sacrifice, where they shield the whole raid. Like, actually be, like, wanting to have them in the raid. Again, not exactly for the individual damage output, but for the immense amount of raid utility they provide is very valuable.
No,
I mean, you
definitely.
want one. You're not stacking Ret Pallies.
Right,
you know?
right. This is not a stack class, yes.
Well, and that's the problem. I think for me, when it comes down to it, and I said this when we talked about this news when it came out, is that I have always felt that classes that only have DPS specs, I feel, should always be the top damage dealers. And especially with dual spec, you bring a lot more to the raid if you can change off to heal or to DPS. That is a huge bonus, and I think it's unfair to the classes that can only DPS. So I always feel that they should be the top damage dealers in the raid. So, you know, that's why I have a problem with, you know, DKs, because I'm just like, this isn't fair. But, you know, they are quote unquote a hero class. So, you know, but at the, you know, I really just think that, you know, this buff was fine. That, like, let me clarify that. Like, I think it was fine. Like, they were really in the bottom of the barrel. But yes, to his point, I am scared that if you are in the top, that scares the crap out of me because I want to go to raid. Like,
Yeah, right.
Mel, do you have any thoughts?
Oh, that's it. They asked me to get a Ret spec, a Pally tank, and I've clearly just avoided that topic of conversation. So I'm fully tank. I can DPS as a tank. That's fine. Whatever. Can't learn Ret. Don't do it.
Now, before the joke was you do more DPS as a prot tank, even if you weren't taking the Ret was.
Oh no.
I don't know if that was that was actually true. I don't know a ton about Pallies, but yeah, that's the only thing I think people would be scared about is that, you know, they could do so many things, and then now what if they were one of the tops? And doing research to back in the day, just whatever. A friend of the show, Table Slam, did a spreadsheet where he found old DPS chart records from ICC, and on Sorafang, Ret Paladins were the number 6 overall damage on that fight. On Festergut, they were number 5, and on Rotface, number 4. So you could be kind of scared about what could happen in the future. That could put them up quite high in the charts. So it's something you kind of got to watch. So the one last thing. So their new taunt move that's changed with the glyph, the biggest controversy is that it's not on the GCD. What do you think about that?
Well, it's like the caller said, if you had it on the GCD, it would either be not a buff or a significantly smaller buff, because it'd just be replacing a different ability. You know, either the other ability is stronger and you would never use this, or the other ability is just like a little bit weaker and, you know, the DPS gain is only the difference between the two. Yep. When it's not on the GCD, it's just purely an extra button that you get to press, extra damage that you get to deal. I mean, you could make it go either way, and it's just kind of a tuning question of like, do you want the ability to deal more damage and be on the GCD, less damage off the GCD? Like, how much are you intending to buff this by? I mean, I think it's fine. It's definitely easier to integrate into the gameplay if it's not on the GCD. If it was GCD, you'd have to like figure out like, okay, well, when do you cast it? When do you prioritize this over that? And then it's a whole mess.
Yeah, just like most things, there's multiple layers to it. You know, that's where so many people forget when they go in. And if you read what the devs said, they said they wanted the gameplay of the Ret Pally to feel the same. And if you do this right, you macro it into all of your abilities, and then therefore the gameplay is exactly the same. So I guess that's what they're looking for, they got that.
What's funny is that our Valley tank who's playing Ret in our weekend raid is he was like, this is actually kind of fun, you know, I got an extra button to push, I'm kind of enjoying this. And Harscar raid lead was like, well, don't you just macro it into every move? And he was like, oh,
I guess you could do that. No. I was having fun hitting another button though.
Yeah.
Oh, it's good stuff.
Look, frankly, I'm a classic World of Warcraft enjoyer. I thought peak World of Warcraft was when I was a dagger rogue in Molten Core. I'd press backstab, 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 and then slice and dice, and then repeat. I like it when the game is simple and I just get to chill. I get so stressed out when I play my other characters like Warlock, when I'm keeping track of life tap, corruption, curse, immolate, then choosing 3 different filler abilities. And like that's not fun for me. I just want to chill and relax.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I feel when I play my prop pally. I'm like, this is like, it's like a lot. There's a lot of stress here. Like, I don't know exactly what I'm doing, right? Like, I can play my discipline priest and be like, okay, yeah, I got this, right? I mean, I just shield a lot, but my prop ally is definitely, and it's not like super complicated. It's just not as comfortable.
All right. Oh, well, we appreciate your call. And definitely everybody check out the Mere Casuals podcast. They are pretty good. All right. On to the next one. Now, I think it's the next 2. The person got cut off, so they're kind of long ones, but here we go.
Hey, Bob and Mel. This is Ballhawk from Horde side on Grobulus. I've leveled a new character, a druid, named Ball Chugger. And I'm in the guild. I'm the GM of the guild, a Midwest emo mixtape. Now, we've had some hard times. The guild broke up. People wanted to do 25-man content, which I don't blame them. You know, so the guild broke up. We split up. We went different ways. We still chat, talk. And where I got pretty disheartened afterwards, and then I joined another guild. That guild sucked. Their Discord sucked. Talking with them was just terrible. Then I left that guild, which was really quick-lived, joined another guild, which was great. We were pushing 25-man Old War content, hard modes. Then that guild dissolved because it was some loot council, and people weren't having it. People who didn't understand, or it was unfair. I didn't really find it unfair, but so that one broke up, and I've just been really feeling really heavy about it. And I'm kind of at the point where I don't really have a lot of energy to raid anymore. I keep feeling like every time I put time into a guild, it dissolves. And I have this great guild name, and I'm not the best guild leader, but I'm just trying to find my stride again in WoW. We got into a new guild, the Harbingers, and they're raiding Tuesday, Wednesday, which is a great time for me with work and everything and just fitting into my schedule. But it's hard to find the interest to come back and raid full time. I'm one of those raiders that shows up on time or early with all my pots and mats and everything that I need for the raid. And to see guilds dissolve, to see raid teams dissolve over and over again, it's just hard to find. So I'm thinking, what do I do? Do I take a hiatus, like a break? Pretty much all I'm doing now is logging on, doing my fishing daily, logging on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, doing the raid. Last week, since I'm a new member in this new guild, they asked me to sub out on Wednesday. So that's like Freya, Memoron, Vizax, and Yogg. And so I was like, sure, no problem. But, being a recruit again, after being a hardcore raider and a hardcore raider and a hardcore raider, where do we go from here in progression?
Yeah, I'll play the next one, but where he gets to his actual full question.
Hey, sorry, I got cut off there. Anyways, the point is, I logged on the other day. I thought, I want to do something fun in the game. It's been a while. I've taken kind of like a couple-day hiatus. I wanted to do Violet Hold Heroic Plus, and there was one person in queue on a Tuesday. One person in queue. So I don't know if they're thinking about opening up in phase 3, doing random dungeons, which I'm totally for, and you've talked about before. But where do you get the steam to go again after your guild has dissolved? Or do you hire on a new guild leader and have them take over and maybe push your guild in the right direction? A Midwest Emo Mixtape is a great guild name, and I can't let it go. Anyways, thanks for all the content. Thanks for everything that you guys are doing. Bob and Mel, you guys are wonderful. Mel and Bob, you guys are wonderful. And
there you go.
I appreciate everything you all are doing. I listen every single week. So come and say hi, Ball Chugger, Ball Hog on Globulus. Have a good one.
So, man, my heart goes out to this guy.
No, first of all, the first time I heard Midwest Emo Mixtape, I was like, yes, thank you for that. That's amazing.
This is a great name. But yeah, my heart goes out. Like, this is a tough situation, and not everybody is, we all talk to content creators, and, we go out. I mean, we're obviously cool with putting ourselves out there easily. And so therefore we find a spot, but I mean, it's hard, like there's GDKPs, like that's a route. But at the same time, like lots of people aren't really looking for that. They're looking for like the more camaraderie and guild. Yeah,
definitely.
I think if you relate it to kind of real life too, right? Like when you think about switching jobs, maybe you're like happy at your job, but maybe it's like you're not going anywhere or something, right? And so you switch jobs and all of a sudden you have to like prove yourself again, right? Like you have to show them that you're that person that maybe you've been at your other job for 5 years and they already knew you were good at this and good at that, right? You have to get that respect again. And I think that's really difficult for anybody, right? And so I don't know. I feel like you stick it out and you kind of take the rookie card and you be okay with it, be chill. And I think you'll grow into feeling that camaraderie with them and they'll see that, you know, you're a team player and you're like, yeah, I'll come when you need me, and fill your time in other ways. And I don't think it's bad to raid log sometimes.
Yeah, I'd say finding a good group of people to play with is the hardest part of playing World of Warcraft. And you know, you got to find a group of people that like their expectations of you match what you are willing to do. You know, like
big thing.
Someone who's like a really hardcore player who wants to raid log, kill all the hard modes, you know, full consumes, maximum damage, whatever. They're not going to have a good time if they join a more casual guild that's just kind of hanging out, having a good time, bringing 3 Ret Paladins to raid because Jimmy, Tim, and John all want to play Ret Paladin and they're cool guys. You know, you got to find the guild that fits you. There's absolutely nothing wrong with playing in a more casual guild or a more hardcore guild. And it's just like, that's a really difficult thing to find the right group of people for you. And like that has a raid spot for the class you want to play too. You know, that eliminates so many options, you know, making sure you fit in that way too. That's something that, finding new guilds is not something I have a lot of experience with. Through all of Classic, I've played in 2 different guilds, and it was not at all an easy decision when I left one guild to move to the one I'm in now. But for a long time, I felt like these have been and still are very good places for me to play that I've enjoyed. So I don't have a lot of experience with the like trying to integrate into a new group.
Yep.
Yeah, we've been in the same guild the entirety of Classic, so
yeah, for Classic we have, but we did find different guilds each expansion back in the day. Back in the day without Discord and stuff. I've said it before. I feel like nowadays the guild camaraderie is much stronger because of Discord, social media, anything that connects you. Because before, you know, it was just like I knew a few people in the raids, but you know, we were also in a lot harder core raids, and so it was a lot more militaristic back then. At least I don't know what the hardcore guilds do now, because when we came back, I was like, the one thing I don't want to do is go hardcore like we did before. I want to do all the content, but you know, I don't want to go back and do that top server guild thing ever again, really. But yeah, back in the day, being on the top was a lot harder. It was, you know, an 8-hour a day, 5-day a week job.
I think the main thing that separates what I'd call the hardcore guilds and the more casual guilds at this point is a lot of the more hardcore guilds are running splits to gear up their main raiders faster. So like every raider in the guild is expected to have 2 or sometimes 3 raid viable characters. So like 1 main and then 1 or 2 alts. And then like you run the raid multiple times a week, and each raid is filled with, you know, some number of mains and some number of alts. And basically the mains just have prio on every item they want over any of the alts. So the mains get geared up 2 or 3 times as fast, but it's a lot of extra work and a lot of extra commitment.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate that a lot of the YouTube creators and everything else, you know, like they do these types of things and they make these people feel like they have to do that too. And you can't do that. Like you don't have the infrastructure in most guilds to do this type of thing. And so to expect that your guild would go in and just whop all the hard modes after no PTR would be an unrealistic expectation when guilds like Fusion basically spent every hour that the PTR was open working in there, you know, like, and people forget that
so much.
Yeah. So
yeah, I feel like a lot of people have been pretty discouraged. Like a lot of people ask me, oh, my guild didn't kill this hard mode that, for 2 whole weeks. Should I quit my guild, Simon?
Oh God,
No.
no.
Completely unreasonable. Like, some of the hard modes, they're more like execution based. Like, you have to learn the mechanics, and it's gonna take you a lot of reps regardless. And other ones, like Algalon even, is more of a gear check than an execution check. So it's like you're gonna gear up over time in your normal modes, in the easier hard modes, before you can take on that fight. And it's a process, and that's very different than we've experienced all of Classic WoW so far.
Right.
Yep.
Every other raid tier that has released, it has been easy. And it's like even the casual guilds can expect to full clear it the first day or the first week at the very least. So I think it's a pretty big change. And before Ulduar came out, I was like not sure how this would really go over. And I'm still not totally convinced that having these hard modes that also have the best loot behind them is really what I'm used to in Classic.
Yeah. I've always that's one of the things like that just kind of started to turn me off about the game as we went into Cataclysm, which is when I quit originally, is that I thought, it was cool to have harder challenges. I just always wanted it to be more cosmetic type of things rather than gear, because gear just makes the rich stronger and, the poor just kind of get stuck in the same spot, which I've just always thought, I've always thought that was a kind of a bummer about how it all worked. And so, but I don't know.
I agree with that 100%. I think the difficulty should be player driven, and it should be cosmetic rewards, not gear rewards. Because a lot of people that can't access that harder stuff, like they feel like they're not getting the best equipment. They feel left out. They feel like they're not cutting edge. And certainly I know if I was in that position, I would feel less interested in playing the game, because I like being able to have the best stuff, compete in the World of Warcraft.
Yep.
And like, man, if my guild wasn't clearing those hard modes, I'd be asking some streamer, Simon, should I quit my guild 2 weeks and they're not doing, whatever a hard mode. For the entirety of Classic, all the like speed running and competitive boss parsing, there's no gear reward for that. It's all player driven. Yep. So it's only players that want that difficulty that are experiencing the content in that way. Everyone gets their chance to see all the content, gets their chance at all the best loot, because accessing it at that level is just not difficult. And I feel like that's the best way that World of Warcraft has been. And, I'm still kind of skeptical if the new system in Ulduar and going forward is really good or not.
Same. And I've been saying it since the beginning, like TOC was a big one for me, because that's where the gear jumped up a ton, and then all this work we did in Ulduar felt bad, which is kind of, they upped the gear this time around and stuff, which is probably going to make it better. But it also degrades the awe of what the top end guilds do, because it's a perceived thing. It's not true, guys. The top end guilds are just better than you. That's just the case. But the perceived thing is, from a lot of people, is that, if I had that gear, we could do the same thing, and since they can't get that gear, that can never be actually proved wrong. So it's like a perceived thing that, these guys, just because they have a ton of time to play, they can do things that I can't, when, the reality is they can just do things you can't. But, you're always going to have that excuse in your head, well, they've got this gear that I can't get, type of deal. And so I think it's a bad mix for that too. It hurts the top end players doing really cool things.
We got a term for that.
Copium, yep.
Oh, that's some copium right there, man. If I had all that Embrace of the Gladiator and all that Dark Matter and Algalon gear, man, then we could be doing those hard modes, man. Those good guilds, they're only good because they got all the gear, man.
Yep. And those guys are everywhere. But
yep.
Yeah, I feel bad for you. I think you try and get in a good guild. Guilds do have turn around. I wouldn't say try to get into a top guild. Try and get into, like, you're probably just put your guild name on an alt, save it for later. Try to get into a good guild. Be available to go in their raid if they need you. That's your best way to get seen. And then do DKPs or something else towards the end of the week after their raid times. That would be my suggestion, to try and get your spot in a good guild rather than a guild, because a guild forming is going to be rough right now. Guilds merging always seem to have, there's oftentimes trouble there. So I would say do that and don't get disheartened. But the weird thing is he said he couldn't find a group for the daily on Grobulus, which that sounds weird. Like, I understand on some of the smaller servers, but
I think I've diagnosed the problem. He said he was right. So I think the root of all of his problems are from rolling Horde. You know?
True.
If you were Alliance, you'd probably be much happier in the place that you found.
All right, well, let's move on to the next one. I think this one is the crazy one.
Hey, Mr. Blazing Bob. Short-time listener, you have saved my sanity from my long-time drive home. Not that much fun. Not sure what to say, but you hit some notes that absolutely piqued my interest. I highly recommend Future Man as well. It definitely gets better the longer you watch it, the deeper you get. But my question is, have you ever been obsessed with a song that for some reason when you're doing a marathon leveling, you just get into a singular song to play over and over again, and before you know it, one of those cyclical rising and lower ebb and flow where it gets way better the longer you listen to? I got Seal's Kissed by a Rose. I don't know if you've ever heard the DMX versus Pokemon mashup. Put that on YouTube repeater. About 3 hours in, you'll be about it more. And, of course, my all-time favorite, Cher's Believe. Do you believe in life after love? I believe. So, take care. Thanks for saving my sanity, or whatever's left of it. And have a good one, bud.
Okay, so his question was, Chad said they couldn't hear it really well. I hope I could probably fix that for the show and post. But the question was, do you ever get like one song that like we'll be grinding or doing something, leveling, and you just want to play that song over and over again while you do that? Do you guys have one of those songs?
Well, when I was leveling, I liked listening to the Cowboy Bebop soundtrack, and there's about 6 hours of music there, so it's not really like one thing on repeat, but I'd listen to the same soundtrack every day while leveling. I liked it. There's a lot of good music there.
All right, Mel?
I mean, Celine Dion, obviously. It's all coming back to me now. You know, we could listen to that on repeat. I could do that.
It's all coming back to me now. Yeah, that's a song that builds. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
If I was going to do, and I have, I guess, done this song probably 5 or 6 times at the end of the night sometimes, would be the cover of Sound of Silence. It was covered by, oh my gosh, I'm blanking.
Disturbed did a cover of that?
Yep, Disturbed.
Yeah,
that song is epic. And
that's a good one.
Yeah, and then they also, I would do that. I sometimes flop between that and their cover of Land of Confusion.
Mm-hmm.
This is the land of confusion. Ha, ha, ha. Yeah, those get me pumped. Those get me pumped. But usually I listen to, like, if you've ever come on my stream, you'll be amazed by the music. It'll go from Tupac to One Direction to some country song from the 90s, and then to something hard rock. So it really blows people's minds. So I like a lot of different music, but I'm gonna have to check out that Cowboy Bebop soundtrack. All right, Next one, we're almost done.
Hey, Bob and Mel
we
and
got
guests.
through 'em.
This is Quaid from Carolina. Just wanted to say hi and thank you all for doing this podcast. It gets me through some of the working days
This
whenever
one's
I'm
great.
working, you know. Before I go, I had a buddy here that wanted to ask you a question. I'll just give it over. Hello there, Blazing Bobby. Hank Hill, Cyclone Propane. My question is to get a little pointers about being a rogue on a hardcore server. Right now I'm a combat swords doing some Blazing Fury. Level 30 on that there Blood Sail Buccaneers. Tell you what, it's a pretty good server. Ran into some degens the other day, but I got over it. Might have died to some Murlocs on my warrior. About level 15, had a bad time. They didn't want to get away. Anywho, I'll let you go, and you keep on trucking.
That was great because we have the discussion bumper with Hank Hill, so that was awesome. Simon, have you played hardcore?
Hardcore, I've not tried it. I just imagine myself getting so incredibly frustrated if I died. I'm like, this can't be a good experience for me. You know?
Rough. It's definitely rough.
It's not even as bad. Like, it's fine until you hit like level 30 and 40, and then it's like really stressful, right? You're like, okay, I've invested a lot right now. If I die, like, I'm just gonna be so mad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I can answer. I do have a hardcore level 60 that completed the challenge solo, but
wow.
I first died at level 35, then at level 29 to drowning. By the way, in vanilla, you drowned a lot faster. Just heads up. You get about just a few seconds. I thought I had taken an underwater breathing potion. It was actually an agility potion. And yeah, that was a rough night. But then I died at 19, then died at 14, then died at 5, and decided, okay, buckle it down here. I'm going to do all the professions and I'm going to make it. So my advice is on a rogue, especially because people say it's easy, but it's not. Without cooldowns, you are in trouble. So go sub until you get hemorrhage, then go down combat until you get blade fury. And it's a really fun spec. You're basically going to be going, what you're going to be wanting to do is you want a dagger and then two combat weapons. And what you're going to do is you're going to make a ambush macro that equips the dagger first. You're going to open with ambush. And this specs, you can find it all over the place. Just look up hardcore rogue best spec. Open up with ambush, then that basically half-lifes any mob, and then you can beat it down. But if you ever do not have vanish, sprint, and those types of cooldowns up, just be patient, wait. Just log out and wait. It's not worth it. Now, if you have prep up, it's cool. Like, just go ahead and keep going. But if prep is down and all of your CDs are down, just don't even try it. The slow one wins the race. So that's my advice to you on the rogue. Now, if you're a druid, it's easy peasy, and you just do whatever you want.
Yeah, I would say just go priest, and you'll
Priest
be fine.
is easy peasy too.
Not easy peasy. It took a lot of skill.
It's one of the really nice hardcore characters. But yeah, you should try hardcore sometime. I finally got talked into it. I was always like, that's not for me, and then it was kind of bad because I would just completely stop playing TBC and just was hardcore on hardcore. It was for months.
Cool. A lot of fun.
Yeah, I think you'd have a good time. All right, this is the last one. Whoa, it's been great, guys. Send in more.
Hey, Mel and the other guy. It's Matt from Pagel.
Yes.
Got two things for you quickly. First one, we're dealing with the roster boss again. It kind of feels like P2 at TBC felt, where you're sitting at 23, 24 people, and you're pulling from the same pool as everyone else, and you just can't fill up that 25, 26 batch 5. Wondering if you guys have had the same problems or experienced any of those issues. Secondly, really want to start a podcast as well, but I have no experience in audio or any of that stuff. Wondering if you guys have any good guides or any advice on getting that set up. I appreciate you guys. I listen to you every week, and I'll hear from you soon.
You been having any roster boss problems, Simon?
I thought he said lobster boss. I was
Roster
like,
boss.
Who's the lobster boss? So confused.
Roster boss.
For the first couple of weeks, like I'm in a more high-end guild. We do run 2 splits. So, you know, I've got my main and my alt that I go into guild raids. We took a 2-3 week, was it 2? Oh gosh, I can't remember now. I think it was 3 weeks to kill Algalon in our A team. And our B team was really struggling. A lot of people were upset because like the B roster was just like not even downing all the hard modes, not to mention like not getting Algalon. So we weren't not filling raids, but we weren't meeting the goals that our players expected, and that caused a bit of friction. But this week, we kind of divided up the roster a little bit better, and we were able to get Algalon down in both of our 25-man splits. So I think we're back on track now, but we did have a bit of a rough start in this phase.
Yeah, we've had in the past, before Wrath, we've had problems with this. Luckily, in our main raid, we haven't had a lot of problems because we run a second raid where a lot of the guild runs alts, but then also there are main raiders that if they don't get into the main raid, then they go on the weekend raid. So since that runs later, they could fill in if somebody can't make it. So we've been lucky there.
Weekend raid, we've had 23.
We've had problems
max.
in the we're currently recruiting. Yeah, but we've gotten through everything. Right? Yeah. Yeah, the second raid's casual.
I think you're just going to see that, right? Like in a more casual raid, you're going to have more roster problems. In our main raid on Tuesdays and Thursdays, like people always post if they're going to be absent. Well, for the most part. And then, you know, we're able to fill those spots. So we don't have nearly as many roster issues on that one, but the more casual raid, definitely.
Yeah, it's a tough go, especially if you're wanting to do a hard mode. We were wanting to. We did a lot of progression on Tuesday night for us Assembly of Iron hard mode, and we were close. And we did some research after the raid, and Thursday we were going to be able to do it. A paladin healer had something really bad come up and was not able to make it, had no internet. So we wanted to make sure and get all the other hard modes that we do, which is all of them besides Memron. And we wanted to make sure to get those done with the rest of the raid time we have, because we only raid 5 hours a week. So we ended up just being like, okay, well, we'll just have to try again next week. We'll just do this on normal and get our other hard modes done. So, I mean, guild leadership is where you're just going to have that, and you're going to have to recruit people that understand that they might not get in, and that's really hard at a guild that only runs one raid. Running a second casual raid makes things a lot easier from our perspective so far. And then if you're at a top-end guild like Simon, it's a lot easier, right? Yep. And how hard it is to get in those guilds plays a factor too, because people are going to take it. The more serious your guild is, the more serious people are going to take it. So, and they're not going to want to lose their spots. So they're going to come with a broken arm. You know, that's what I used to do back in the day. I actually needed stitches one time because I fell running to the bathroom, like in between pulls. Hit my arm on the like corner of the table, gashed open my arm. I wrapped it up in a white shirt, tied it hard, got through the next 3 hours of raid, and then Mel took me to the ER. But I didn't lose my spot, and so know?
Oh my God.
Let's not recommend any viewer follow
Right.
suit, okay?
No, definitely
Yes.
not. Definitely not.
These
but
were called bad life decisions by
Yep.
Bob.
yeah, well,
Learn
it was.
from Bob's mistake,
Yes.
okay?
You think it's hard to find a really good guild now? It was really hard back in the day, man. There wasn't all those outlets, and like the servers weren't as big. There was all kinds of different issues, but yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, I think that's it. Well, thanks you everybody for the voicemails. Again, that's 816-866-1066 or speakpipe.com/Warcraft Reloaded. Okay, guys, what have you been doing? Just been doing Ulduar? What have you been doing? Mount runs and different stuff. What have you been doing besides raiding, Simon?
Ooh, okay. Besides raiding, well, frankly, most of my stuff is raiding. I've been trying to run 3 rogues through 10-man and 25-man and keep my warlock in a respectable condition for this guild split. So that's most of my time. But you know, every single week, you know, take a little bit of copium and go back into Molten Core, telling myself the binding will definitely drop this week. I can do those runs solo on my Death Knight, and that's just fun. I mean, like, the Death Knight kind of sucks in general, but it's fun to be able to go into those old raids and just solo the bosses that took 30, 40 people to kill before.
Yep, same with the warriors.
It's pretty fun.
Pretty fun.
And like, there's the chance that you see something really cool drop. You see a binding. I got a healing power recipe this week on my Death Knight, which is like a enchanting formula that's really good for heirloom enchants, and like the formula sells for 2,000 gold, or I could learn it on my enchanter and try to sell scrolls that are like 300 gold profit each. So I haven't actually decided what to do with that one yet, but outside of that, I have been trying to keep up with the YouTube content, which falls a little bit behind. But I learned about a AI voice software.
Dude, I saw that.
Like,
your last rogue video was hilarious.
Yeah, so the way it works is like I get some like pretty crisp and clean audio clips of Algalon from the game, and I upload it to this AI software, and it analyzes the voice, and it's like, okay, I know how to talk like Algalon now. And then you feed it text and you say, speak this in Algalon's voice, and you adjust some settings, you know, some pitch and some whatever to get it just right. And then, like, you could make Algalon say whatever you want.
Dude, I thought, I was like, is he using some sort of software for this? But then I was like, maybe he really did hire the voice actor on Fiverr. Like, I was cracking up when that came on. It was pretty good.
Yeah, I did part 1 of my like Ulduar boss guides. I had a guest speaker of Algalon the Observer, and part 2 is like the Keepers, General Vezax, Yogg, and Algalon himself. And that one I'm working on the script for, and there's actually just a lot more to talk about on those bosses. So this script is going just keeps getting bigger.
I'm sure.
I, like, take some notes. I'm like, wait, I got to talk about this thing on that boss. I want it to be, you know, comprehensive. So it's a little delayed. I thought I was going to do a quick, you know, 1-2 on those, but it's taking a little more time on the second one than I thought.
Yeah, I bet. Because, like, you go through, you got Ignis, Razor Scale, and stuff. But I just loved how you were having Algalon talk shit in so many different spots. It was really good.
It was a good opportunity to add a little bit of comedy to. But honestly, my videos are usually kind of dry and informative, you know, straight to the point. A lot of people comment how I have a very monotone voice when like, they don't like it. So I'm like, maybe I can make this work a little bit better. And so far the reception's been good, so I've been happy with that. I tried to make it do Brand Bronzebeard first because I thought that'd be a great fit for talking about Ulduar. But the AI, for some reason, could not handle Brand's like Scottish accent.
Really?
tried many different audio samples
Ugh.
from Bran.
We gotta go in here
It would
now.
always give him this like English accent. And it's like, this is not recognizable as Bran Bronzebeard. It's so different. I don't know why, but it couldn't handle that, but it could handle Algalon pretty well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I like that too. I would say I do enjoy the way you do them too. So I wouldn't say completely cut those out because I love I think that's what sets you apart from others. Is like, hello, my name is SimonizeShow. I'm bringing you a rogue guide. You know, like, I mean, it isn't even, it's not even how you normally talk. So, I mean, it's your like, you know, I mean, it's what makes me think of you. So, I mean, I think anybody who said you talk with a monotone voice is wrong because I thought it was great.
Well, thank you.
But yeah, it was just funny to hear Algalon talking shit and everything. I was just cracking up.
Part of the refinement of the script for part 2 is making sure the jokes and the shit talk is on point also. Okay.
There you go.
Not just the strategy.
That's great.
Oh,
yeah. Oh, you said you did something in there that I wanted to hit on. What was it? It was right before you were saying what you were. Oh man, dang it! I forget. I was about to like follow up on it, and then you went on to the Algalon, made me completely forget. It was something.
Keeping up with the YouTube content.
I think it was right before that.
Molten Core.
Was it Molten Core?
Running Molten Core?
No, it was in between those two. I don't know.
Well, we'll have to check the VOD.
Yeah, if I think about it, I'll come back to it.
Yeah.
What have you been doing, Mel?
I've been celebrating the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And raiding. That's about it.
Yeah, we are tired. We went to downtown Kansas City for both the game, stayed the night and partied, and then the parade and stayed the night and partied. And yeah, we're not as young as we used to be. And we still made most raids. So we only took off the Sunday night raid, which got canceled for the Super Bowl anyway. We took off Wednesday night. So still, we're a little tired, but all right, well, so you've been doing the mount runs. I've been doing some mount runs too. I got lucky, got the what's it called? Tony the Tiger. Yeah, the
cool.
Swift Zolian Tiger. That was cool. But haven't lucked out on any of the other ones, but having a good time. Yeah, just been raiding. It's been weird because we usually do a lot of different stuff, but the raids and stuff have taken up. Oh, we did finish our Fool for Love achievement.
Oh, I haven't finished it yet. I need to finish it.
You make sure to do that. It's over Monday. Yeah.
Depends on what, the 20th?
Monday.
Okay.
Yep.
I just have to make the bracelets, so I just have to go kill mobs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it should be pretty easy. Yeah, but yeah, that's just been lots and lots of raiding. Haven't got to play any hardcore or anything, so
the raiding takes so much time in this phase because there's a best in slot loot out of 10-man and 25-man, and the raids are difficult. They take more time. So like you want to play one character, it's almost twice as much time commitment for one character as it was previous phase.
Yeah, and we do too. You know, I play a main tank for our second raid, the casual one, but you know, that's like I have to be there for every raid. That's important. And then I'm the guild rogue at the moment because I'm combat, but like I'm the only rogue we have. So yeah, it's been nice for weapons though. I'm sitting with best in slot daggers for assassination, but
already you got double blade twisters.
Yep, and I've got the fifth best combo. Lucky. I've got the fifth best combo according to your spreadsheet, which we're going to talk about in the rogue section. Yeah. But I've got the massacrator and the blade twister. So
for combat, okay.
Yeah, cool. So pretty excited about that. I'm doing pretty good there, but yeah, I found out what I wanted to ask. So there was a good quest a good question from Alpha in the chat. Said, how many Uber's Rens runs have you done and how sick of it are you? Do you want to go first or do you want me to go?
I did 100 runs to get it on my main, and I had finished stream one day with 99 runs, and the stream the next day, I was like, I'm prepared to do 50 more runs, and that's the whole stream. So I filled my bags up with consumables, emptied all the other slots for all the vendorables, did the 100th run, and it dropped on the very first run of the day.
Nice.
100 runs is below average. The data suggests it's about a 1 in 50 or a 2%. But, you know, a 1 in 50 doesn't mean you get it by 50 runs. It, you know, can take more than that. And then I'm a crazy person, so I got it on my second rogue on my third rogue.
Oh, God.
But those were luckily much less painful. Those were like 20 something and 30 something. I remember I came in at a total of 149 runs, which is almost spot on average across the 3 rogues. You know, one way above average and the other 2 a bit below average.
Well, I'm going to keep my curse words to myself and say, F you. No, I'm just kidding. So for me, I lost track of the number it took me, but I was able to calculate the number it took me because I had never taken the rogue to Molten Core prior. And for that first boss, you get Hydroxian Water Lord's rep.
True.
So I was able to divide my full rep by the amount that you get, and it was, I believe it was 141 runs that it took for me to see it drop.
That'll happen sometimes.
And when I had finally given up and was just like, why am I even doing this? And I was just talking to I was talking to Classic Go over Discord, him and Table Slam. I was talking to them. We were getting ready to do something. And I was just like, well, I'm just going to do 2 more runs here. And I'm sitting there and it dropped. And they thought I was hurt because I was like, and they thought I was like actually hurt. We're like, you okay, Bob? You okay? I was like, no, it dropped. So
oh my God.
I was pretty sick of it. And just like, when do I call it quits? Like now I feel like I'm probably around 100 or something somewhere. I was like, well, now, you know, I can't quit. Like I have to have it now.
Right.
Oh, how good is it still?
In Ulduar, I find very few opportunities to use it.
There's just not enough mobs in it. The AoE packs take so long. That's my guess. Is that correct?
So like Fellstriker is better when you're facing more enemies, right? You get a higher average uptime of the buff, more chances to trigger per cast of Fan of Knives when Fan of Knives is hitting more enemies. And there's like a threshold of like number of enemies that you want to be hitting for it to be on average a good idea to switch into Fellstriker. And you just don't see that too much in Ulduar. It's like I'd switch it on for like the detonating lashers on Freya to just cast, I don't know, you get 3 or 4 fans off before you run away from them and you hope you get a proc. And then the only other time I'd use it would probably be the Trash Before Vezax, specifically in 25-man. In 10-man, there's fewer mobs in each of those packs.
Yep.
And even then, I don't know if it's even that good. Like, I've tried it a couple times. I like look at the number of enemies, and I'm like, this should be good according to the math I've done. But then I do it, and it's underwhelming. And I don't know if I'm just getting unlucky with the procs. Maybe that's it, or, you know, maybe the math is a little bit off. But what I've been really trying to encourage my guild to do is to pull 2 of those big packs together at once, twice as many enemies, and then it's for sure good. If I can get them to do a 2-pack or a 2-pack pull, then Fellstriker will be great.
Yeah, and I feel like the longer the pull goes, you know, the worse it's going to be because of just like if you do proc early, it's awesome on a short AoE pack because just everything's crits, but you proc early and then the pulls take longer. It's just like, well, now, it's not as great from what I've seen, at least.
Yeah. Usually on those Vezex pulls, those are the ones that live a long time. What I'll do is, instead of like it was in Naxxramas, where I'd always put double instant poison on the weapons because the mobs die in 5 seconds, Deadly's not going to do anything. For the Vezex pulls, I'll put deadly poison on the Fell Striker and stack up some deadly poison on all the enemies at once. And
I've tried that too, yeah.
Tier 8 that's feeding me a little bit of extra energy. But the main thing the deadly poison is different, and then I'll usually open those packs with Mutilate, Slice and Dice, Hunger, because that Slice and Dice, if you're actually attacking for the full duration, like, it's still really, really good, and it's worth, setting up in that scenario. Whereas in Naxxramas, a 13-second Slice and Dice or whatever it's stupid, because like the mobs are dead in 5 seconds.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm not totally convinced like Fell Striker doing even the single pack pulls is like a super good idea there. And yeah, sorry, another factor is like the alternative weapons you have, if you were just going to like use regular weapons anyways, they're all stronger now. So like the margin of difference for like switching into AoE specific weapons is smaller, because the like weapons that were down here are now up here.
Yeah, and it was a big jump in weapons because of the hard mode, 12 or 13 or whatever it was push. Like, that's why raiding is so rough right now, is because we're really forced to do 10-man because, I mean, especially with Rogue. I don't know if Rogue is the biggest one, and I haven't checked all the bits on assassination, but there's 7 slots for combat that are the top bis in 10-man. Yeah, it's just nuts.
Yeah.
So
I mean, there's a lot of best in slot loot. I think that's true for a lot of classes, that they have at least some items that are best in slot. For Rogue, like one of the huge ones is that belt off of Yogg-Saron. And it's so important because the second best option is so much worse than it.
And then the goggles on Mimiron.
The goggles too are a good one, but for that one, like the second best option isn't like that big of a differential.
I will argue with you there, though. It is so ugly. Those two second options are so ugly. I hate it. I want the goggles, man. I want the goggles.
Listen, I love pressing show helm when I've got a ugly ass helmet on my character, because it tilts everyone in my chat. The last time I did show helm prior to now, all my rogues have show helm on now with this tier 8 helmet. I mean, it's beautiful. The last time I did show helm was when in the beginning of TBC, when we were using Helm of the Claw quest reward from that Steam Vaults quest. That was just like a lime green skull cap that looked like it dropped off a level 10 mob. I love that. So many people were frustrated that I do show helm, and I'm just rocking it all the time.
Oh my god.
Dude, I got this weird drop from the event, the boss in the event boss this time.
The Valentine's boss.
Yeah, it's a freaking.
I haven't done it yet. I don't know if I will. I don't usually do too much of the holiday stuff.
Yeah, well, it's a blue item. It's not worth anything, but like, it is a just straight up gas mask. It looks so cool. I was like, this looks cool. That's
pretty cool. That's kind of unique. This. I don't think anything else in the game looks like a gas mask.
Yeah, I was just like, well, if I do happen to play Cataclysm, I guess I'll keep this for Transmog.
Yeah, that's neat.
But yeah, okay. Well, I was just curious about that. But let's go ahead and move into.
Gather around the fire, everyone. I have a story to tell.
Okay, welcome to our Ulduar hard mode raid progression with Yip. And joining us is Ryan, aka Yip. How you doing?
I am doing just fine.
Awesome. And of course, Mel's here too.
I'm here.
That nice
You're
new
lucky.
hat.
Yeah. Bob tried to get me to live stream when we were at the Super Bowl parade. I was really good at it. He's like, I got to go to the bathroom. Will you talk to chat? And I'm like, no.
Oh yeah, she was all tired and she was being a pooper. Oh man, but yeah, we had a good time. If anybody ever wants to check out that stream, it's us after the parade, tired as hell, just walking around and nobody's there. The city had cleared out. It was hilarious.
Bet it feels good to win off the backs of refs.
Yeah.
I got no stake in this.
Oh man, yeah.
I actually was watching though, and it was kind of. I don't even like football, but it was a pretty fun game. I was like, whoa, people are scoring. I like that.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Offensive game for sure.
I don't think anybody, well, at least I don't like late calls at the end of the game, whether they help my team or hurt. Like, I just don't like it. It just, because people always find a way to make up some stuff, but then nobody talks about the fumble TD that we got that was clearly a catch and called back for them. You know,
yeah.
I think
that was way too early in the game to make a difference.
I think Bill Burr's take on it on YouTube is about a 10-minute video. I think that said how I felt completely, but yeah, he's not even a Chiefs fan, and he wanted the Eagles to win. But either way, we won. It's happy, and everybody played their tails off, and the Eagles put up a great fight. All right. Well, yeah. Sorry about the Chiefs.
That was the story we had to tell.
No, we have to tell, and hopefully we keep it all straight in our heads, because like we've just been raiding so much. We're going in to raid all 10-man hard modes right after this. So, yep, get us going.
Don't worry, I've got the trauma ingrained onto my brain.
I bet, yeah, because we progressed a fight that is extremely brutal on tanks.
Yeah, it's certainly fun. But we went in this week with just 2 fights that we wanted to progress. XT, which we were pretty positive we'd get down, but we've been like progressing other stuff, so we didn't want to spend too much time prior. We know that it like got nerfed a couple weeks ago, but we still didn't prioritize killing it. But this week we had the time, so we did go and do that. Most of us had done it in 10-man by now, and everything is pretty much the same. Mm-hmm. We really didn't. The biggest problem is just getting people out of the tantrum alive, and we were doing that really well for the AoE, but people were getting comboed out by the gravity bombs a lot, and then over the course of like a couple tantrums, we're down a few people, and then suddenly it gets harder and harder. So that was what was happening at first a little bit. Part of that, I don't normally get like frustrated, but I was getting a little frustrated because those life sparks were not dying at all. And the fight really isn't that hard to me. Like, I feel like we had minutes left before the berserk timer, right? So it's sort of like we can live through tantrums. We have divine sacks, we had the hymns. I was pretty confident if we had to take a third tantrum, we'd be fine. So the first 2 attempts, we weren't really killing life sparks. There was a point where I think 3 of them were out during a tantrum, and I was like, oh my god,
what is going on right now?
Why?
Yeah, it was insane damage, and I didn't even realize that's what was happening. I was just like, okay, what? Like, what is this? Like, this is nuts.
Yeah, the other problem is with that many out, they can like go melee people, and they actually hurt quite a bit. Like it's hard for me to hold aggro on 3 things as they're like popping out to the side. So like someone gets 1 shot from that before I get to taunt it back. So other than that, though, it's really easy. You drop the wells to the side, the gravity bombs to the side, and you drop the life sparks, the searing light on his right foot. And then once we got those killed, really like the fight's almost easier because the pummelers don't come out anymore once you get through the heart. So it's actually like less tank intensive of a fight, but it's just insane healing. And we've seen that on 10-man too. Like occasionally, like a group can't do the 10-man version, and it really all comes down to just living through tantrum. And if you can't, you can't. It's tough.
Yeah, I was I was watching Simonize's new video. He was just giving just basically rogue tips and tricks for the first half of the bosses. And he mentioned that on XT, he said, have ranged exclusively kill sparks. And we were doing, and I don't know if that's right or not, or I mean, there's really no super right or wrong answer like in stone, but I mentioned it to Harskar, and he was like, well, I'll check logs of guilds that are doing it every week. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like why didn't I think of that? But
brilliant.
he did make a good point about then the melee don't take the AoE, but like I don't know if our raids were even, because they were dying so slow. Like I don't know if our raids were even killing the sparks, so I don't even know.
The melee would take the AoE, by the way. It's a 500-yard AoE. The entire raid takes it as long as the spark is up.
Really? Okay.
It doesn't matter where the spark is. The whole raid will take it, which is why it's so important to kill. Because it's only like 1,000 damage to take, which is like, 1/20th of people's health. But with a couple of them up, continuing to pulse. And
the tantrum going out, like it just adds up.
So I honestly think range would be good. It's just, I always... I think a struggle in Prague is having like too many voices, start changing strats. If it were 10 man, I would be like, ranged, launch your freaking bolts at the thing too. But in 25 man, 25 man, we'll just roll with what we need to roll with to make the strategy sound and work out. But yeah, we had to get them down a little quicker.
I try when I do that to just be like, say like a thought really quick, and if it gets shot down, I just leave it alone, instead of trying to push the point. I'm just like, hey, idea, then I'm done. You know what I mean? Like, but I get what you're saying when everybody's like, we should do this, we should do that.
Yeah.
It can get a little crazy.
It's tough if there's too many cooks in the kitchen situation. But on our third poll, we were able to get it down. Honestly, not too bad of a fight.
It was best kill ever.
We were literally all dead.
Yeah.
Every single one of us was dead, and
it actually was like dead. It was basically a post wipe kill. Actually, I didn't look at the time. Let me see. His death compared to like our last death. Yep, our last death was technically before it says his death was.
So that split second before reset. Yep.
He died at 6:18, and our last player died at 6:17, and then he fell over and gave us loot. So that final tantrum did wipe us all out.
Yeah.
But it gets easier and easier. But really, I think it is fine. A lot of it is mitigating damage from that, and then having people not die earlier. That's our biggest issue. Is it's okay if people die in like the third tantrum or the second tantrum, but we have people going down like before the first tantrum or during the first tantrum, and I think preventing those deaths. Yeah.
Extends it a long time.
We have the damage to like kill it before. I think that like third tantrum, whatever it is, we have like the damage to go and do that, but with people down, we end up not being able to do that.
Right.
And then we kind of have to like buff people up. There's a lot of these fights where people die, where if you battle res them and don't buff them, they're like instantly going to die again anyway, because there's so much damage coming out. If you're missing like 2,000 health worth of buffs,
right,
you're just dead.
Yeah. It's always hard for me when I get battle res, because I'm like, okay, if I've already used like my mana regen tools, I get battle res, and I'm like, shit. All right.
Yeah, it's insane. Like it's almost a skill in some of these fights that we haven't had to deal with before, because there's so many mechanics on a lot of these that you need to know when to take the battle res. Because some people will just take it and then they'll die immediately, because it's like, oh, like X or Y was coming out when you took that. Like, you actually have to like pay attention to what's happening.
Well, it'd be like Jazz will be like, I res you, Bob. Are you AFK? I'm like, no, I'm just waiting for the right time to take it.
Listen, I'll take that battle res when I
was like,
please.
Yep.
Okay.
Pointed this out to me a long time ago in one of these things where you don't have to take the res immediately. You can wait if something's coming out.
Yeah, you definitely can wait. But yeah, 3 polls on XT. Yeah, it was a beyond. Actually, I totally forgotten. all 25 people dead.
Yeah, yeah.
From my point of view, the fight's not too hard.
Hey,
That's all. A lot of
we
the
did
fights
it.
end up that
It
way.
only took us 3 attempts.
The bigger the boss, the more I can ignore what's going on with the rest of the raid. I'm just like, oh, this big guy's in front of me.
Yep. Oh,
Good
God.
stuff.
And then the second boss that we were going to prog is Iron Council. And we've done Iron Council medium mode to get our key to Algalon, which we do not have yet, but we'll get soon. But we wanted to try to get the hard mode Iron Council because it seems like something that we have the DPS to do. No reason why we couldn't do it.
And I think all of us have done it in 10-man, right?
Yeah,
I think
most of us have done it.
And
yeah,
I tried it once, one shot it once, and was not prepared for this 25-man. Like,
Okay, is it
difference.
like completely different in 25-man?
No, you can just ignore the mechanics more in 10-man, I think.
Okay.
I think all the same mechanics exist. It's just that if like the melee gets static disrupted, you just heal through it. It just doesn't matter.
Got it.
But it's a much bigger deal in 10-man. And then in 25-man. The other thing is the tank's dying mechanic. We can actually kill Steelbreaker before the first tank dies automatically when you get to the last guy. But it's only like 20 seconds or something on 25-man. So we have to like die over and over again, take our soul stone and come back and run over, which is like
which heals the boss. Like that's
which heals the boss. I think to get to the end, we were struggling a lot with the third tank part of Steelbreaker. I would tank, die, and then Fab would tank, die, and then I would die to the first fusion punch. So that's like as far as we got on progress, is figuring out how to mitigate that punch then in order to not die. But we ran into a lot of problems along the way to that point. But that's our like problem that we have to solve in order to kill the boss. One of the ways to do this, I think, is doing enough DPS that he dies before Fab dies. I think it's possible to do, and I'm pretty sure we had like a 4% that was because of that.
Yeah, it was 4.7%.
It was really close.
So I think it's definitely possible to do it that way, but I think we do need to figure out how we don't have another tank die. Because if I die early, then the hot boss heals 20%. I can't die before he dies, or the whole thing's over. So it's definitely tight. So some of the issues we ran into along the way.
You go ahead.
So some of the issues we ran into along the way. Phase 1 is super easy. It's the same as normal, pretty much. You're just killing the little guy, though, instead of the big guy. So that's never been a problem. But once the little guy dies, Steelbreaker gets this ability where he shoots out like static disruption to, I think it's supposed to be the farthest player. And we were having our healer stand out for that to take it. Issues that were coming up is we were thinking at first that people had to be in melee of Steelbreaker, but I think it really is just the farthest players. I don't think we need everyone like super close. So I was having to drag him around like an insanely often amount of time to like realign Steelbreaker.
Both of you guys were having to drag all over the map.
Which is just like, it was just getting crazy. Along with like our death rune placement was usually really bad. We would often get them like on top of the raid or on top of the rune where we were, so that required like a lot more pulling around and things like that. But for the most part, having to move and then deal with just like repositioning, and then Steelbreaker can one-shot me if he's in the rune. That's pretty much what it comes down to. And how close he is to the rune, he has to be like multiple feet out. It's actually shocking how far out of the rune he needs to be for him not to get it. The smaller guys are like no problem. You can hold him right next to the rune.
I have noticed that too. The hitbox is weird.
Guy, if he starts fusion punching me before I pull him right out, it's like I'm dead. And then, of course, the other issue is that he does a lot more damage the more they die. So each time a little guy dies, he does 25% more damage, which makes his melee attacks not like one shot, but it's actually deadly. He'll hit me for like 25k after mitigation. So if healers are busy running around to the death rune, or the healers are like repositioning themselves, it was very easy for me to also just like not die, but sometimes I'd pop Ardent Defender and not have that up for like another scenario where I'd die.
Right.
So that was the real struggle. It ended up being like kind of tough getting into phase 3. Sometimes things would just go wrong. We'd have a random person die. I think that we discovered maybe one of the reasons static disruption was becoming a problem. We were having like our shaman healer at the time die a lot. I think that you want to move in once you get targeted, so you're not targeted twice in a row with static disruption. So I think we're going to try it like that going forward. Harscare mentioned it. We unfortunately, well, I'm just going to say we didn't get Iron Council down.
Yeah.
And we didn't get to like try on Thursday either because one of our healers was absent. So we didn't get to like bring in the new knowledge of like, hey, let's have our people rotate out a little bit.
Yeah.
I think we would have had a kill no problem coming back to it. We were running into like some serious fatigue, and I think still doing pretty well. We had 16 wipes on Tuesday.
Yeah.
With the rest of the raid like weighing on your mind, like we still have the rest of this entire raid.
Everything except for Flame Leviathan and XT.
Yeah, so it feels like a lot. And for tanking, like a lot of the prog fights are just like they're so draining. And you have to be really on. I'm dispelling myself from Fusion Punch, and like halfway through, once I started getting fatigued, I was basically just like, I need someone on backup for this. I die if one tick gets through. And if I just brain dead, hit my rotation, and I'm not on, and I don't have like the GCD open, then I'll take that tick and die. So it's just like, this is like way too small wiggle room. I can't be trusted with this job.
And I didn't think to check it, but that bad rune, the green one, the death rune is what it's called. That thing starts off real, like I feel like it ramps up in damage because like sometimes, you know, like I was saving sprint and boots just for that later on, because sometimes like if I didn't get out is immediately, I'd almost be dead by the time I got out. I was just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's a weirdly punishing mechanic, even just like when you do it the normal style. Like one tick is fine, but as soon as you take 2 ticks, you're like almost dead. Like you'll get comboed out by like when you do it normal style, you can get comboed out by like the little guy spinning doing his whirlwind. At the same time, you take like 2 ticks from Death Rune. It definitely is a lot of damage, and making sure we like do a good job of baiting it out so only like a couple people are on it, I think is key to help mitigate some of that. But we were basically always losing 1 or 2 people in phase 2 from a combination of that.
And when you lose people, doesn't it like the
only
boss?
In phase 3?
Yeah,
only
phase
in phase 3. So that typically wasn't our big problem in phase 3. Like it actually was. We had people die early a lot. So any of our not good attempts that if someone would die immediately going into phase 3, that it was just like an insta wipe. We just can't do anything about it.
What was it that killed Mel because she was too close to going into phase 3?
So this is the other problem that we were running into. There are people who DI, so they just kill themselves instead of exploding. But I was rocket bootsing out. The problem is we were having 3 healers still sitting out to take static disruption, and they were spread out around the boss. So pretty much every direction I could run in is a healer out there. I thought, listen, it sounds crazy. I need to bring up the replay. Mel and I were pretty far apart from each other. Like
pretty far.
I definitely knew I was running past Mel, but with my boots on, I thought it'd be fine. But that was like
I'm healing, and all of a sudden I see this like flash coming by me, and I was like, "What the hell was that?" And he was yipping his rocket boots, and then I was dead.
And I just hear Yip go, "Oh no!"
Because it was such a good. We had everything going right.
Attempt.
It was a really good attempt, and then it's like such a preventable cause of death.
Well, and it was one of those things where I didn't even know that like you were gonna blow up. Like that had just never I had never encountered that. I didn't know that was a thing, and then now I do. Definitely.
Yeah, the issue is it's just like utter mayhem prior to getting into Steelbreaker, and then when that last rune comes out, I'm like repositioning for that rune, and it's hard to see where everybody is, so it's hard to be like, this path is the path I should take. But what we found is most guilds are only using one person for static disruption on that last phase. They're having a hunter, shadow priest, and just having them alternate being out. And I think that will make things a million times clearer. Or we can try the DIing. So instead of me taking the debuff and dying, I think I can just sit in raid with you guys, kill myself, and like DI somebody, and then just get soulstone from there and resurrect. And that way the actual explosion ends up not happening. So that could be an option as well too. Either way, I think we're really close. A lot of the like sloppiness in phase 2 came from like just halfway through the night of Prague. It's just fatigue. I feel like it just gets harder and harder on a fight where like a small mistake means that it's gonna be a wipe.
Right.
Yep.
So that was Iron Council. I mean, I was as a tank. I mean, I was not super stoked about how the night went, but I mean, that's just Prague, and I feel like we got to the point where we'll be able to do it next time we go in with a serious attempt. What I was thrilled about is how quickly we got through all of raids still. So even though we spent 16 wipes, which was we spent from 11:18 on our first pull till 1 a.m. So an hour and 40 minutes on Iron Council, and we still finished before our 5-hour raid time for the 2 nights, doing everything else still with a healer down in that second night. So I definitely can't complain there. I don't know if you guys have more on Iron Council. Bob, how is it to be in runes as melee? I almost don't want to hear.
It's rough. Like any type of thing like that, you don't know until you know that it's just like oftentimes it'd be just barely out. So you're going back and forth, and then like, oh, all of a sudden, okay, my moves are hitting, but there's just so like your yellow moves can at times hit, but your autos aren't. And so like that's like
yellow
you'll
moves?
like
Is that a thing?
Yeah, anything where you press a button, that's your actual yellow damage
The
that comes
damage
up,
is yellow,
and white hits are just are just like the regular hits that come moves. In between. So like you think you're okay, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh no, like I'm not actually doing my full damage, and then you move forward, and then you're out of the rune, and it's horrible as melee. But you guys were doing a really good job of like, Fab and you doing a really good job, and I think Steelbreaker, the hitbox is a lot bigger. So I think once you get to that, I don't think any of those attempts, I don't think I was ever out of the rune.
Yeah, I think what I learned is like his hitbox for absorbing the rune is big, but then the melee hitbox is more forgiving for like how far he can walk away from the rune, and you guys can still hit. But definitely intense fight. I mean, it's fun when it's going on. Like I like the idea of the fight. 16 wipes is a couple too many for my brain.
It's just you guys have to do so much as the tanks,
which is cool when it goes right. Those are the kind of fights where like when you get the kill, you're like, yes, like that's awesome. Right. Kind of like Kael'thas, but then I think back to like dying in a flame strike on Kael'thas, and it's like so miserable.
Right.
So like, oh no, we had to do everything up to this point, and now we're.
That's the worst with the
hits
long
you
fights,
and wipes
right?
everybody.
Yeah, it's the worst with the long fights because you get like the first 2 phases down, and then those just become like annoying, right? That you have to do them again to get to that 3rd phase.
Yep.
Yeah, well, going forward, our plan hopefully is do this next week pretty easily. We will do a couple of wipes on Hodir. I think we have the damage for Hodir, no problem. We just need everything to line up better. And we never really wipe on it, so I think we just need to call a wipe and go ahead and do that. And then all that's really left is Mimiron for us to get down. We're going to be proccing 10-man on that with my group tonight, so hopefully we'll see some... we'll have more people be a little bit
Don't
better
worry, I've already done it.
Yeah, Mel can guide us. Mel can guide us through Firefighter and 10-man. And then hopefully, I mean, in an ideal world, we have some time to try it in 25-man next week. That would be the hope. But, you know, minimally getting Iron Council down and then getting some attempts on Hodir and hopefully getting that down would be really cool and put us in a really strong place.
Listen, after doing 10-man Memron, I have very little desire to see what that's going to entail on 25-man.
Well, we did try it a couple times after you guys did it the night after.
It was just as chaotic as I thought it would be
nuts,
on 25-man.
Yeah, it was nuts.
Yeah, it seems tough. It's so hard to, because you kind of want to balance, like, Ulduar is a fun raid. It's like, hey, wouldn't it be fun if we just killed Memoron really fast and didn't deal with all the fire? But I've got Biss off him, so we'll have to kill him. So
oh, I see, yeah.
Oh yeah, it's been cool, but it's definitely something new. I'm wondering, and you guys can like leave a comment or write in or send a voicemail in, but I bet guilds that, you know, aren't ready for it, if they're trying to do hard modes, because, you know, all the YouTubers said, you know, you just have to do this, you'll be good. Like it's a different story, you know. It's a different story.
Yeah, I feel bad because like Nax got me really hyped up. I was like, dude, we're the sickest guild in the world. I kind of feel like, not like, oh, we're not good, but kind of humbled by Ulduar and kind of okay with not pushing to be insane. Like, I don't know if I'd want to spend 4-hour nights doing more prog to make sure we got it down. I'm kind of enjoying this like week by week, like we get to pump on the stuff that we're good at, and then we're progging on like a fight or two, and that's kind of fun to do. It's like it's a nice balance where we can get through the raid and then also choose where we get to prog. I think that's really nice. And yeah, I mean, I've always considered us really strong, and this thing is definitely kicking our asses on some fights. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, you know, in Nax we could see the skill of all the parsers, you know, but now sometimes it's you doing your job is more important than, you know, especially on the fights that aren't really asking you to hit a DPS check. It's just asking you to do your job and not die. And the DPS, you know, yeah, it'll improve, you know, your times and stuff, but really the biggest deal is to stay alive. Don't do anything crazy, you know.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's hard for people to stomach.
Yeah, it really highlights though. Like, I feel like Ulduar is a definite like, you're sucking tonight type of like raid, right? Like, there's no like, I wonder whose fault it was. No, it's like, Mel, you died 4 times. What happened? Like, what are you doing? Or like, I think I died a ton on Freya when we were doing Freya, and I was like, what is happening? How do I keep dying? And I kept like, I'd get rooted and my mushroom would disappear, and I'd be like, no, like I can't do anything, literally nothing.
Freya loves comboing people out, to be fair. Like, roots at the same time as the sunbeam coming down on you, nature's fury, and you're rooted on. It's like, oh my god.
Like, come on.
Yeah, and well, and on that fight, I ended up on Freya. I ended up just being like, somebody asked if I was using crippling. I was like, well, I usually do that on 10-man, but I usually don't have to on 25-man. But I was like, but my combat rogue DPS really isn't super necessary here, so I'll go ahead and swap out. You know, I'll swap out deadly. You know. Really,
the only time that DPS matters on Freya is on the Elder, just because like all the other stuff going on is like hard and annoying. Yep. So you still have to obviously do those other mechanics, but you want it to dead as fast as possible. But yeah, with the detonators and stuff, it's just like I just stop hitting all my buttons other than like consecrate, and I toss a bomb down because I don't want to cleave with like Hammer of Righteousness, and then they explode early and everything gets messed up. But yeah, I mean, the fights are definitely, they keep us on our feet, and we did wipe a couple times on Freya. So like we're definitely
Which is weird because we've had it down pat, right?
I think it's the lack of the second Holy Paladin. I think we underestimate. Holy Paladins are really good.
Yeah.
And they're really good at healing stuff like that we were losing single people to. Like someone taking a lot of damage in roots, while Holy Paladin's like insane single target will pop them up and to keep healing the tank. So they're just really strong for that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, Old War is full of tough fights, ones that will surprise you and kill you if you're not on your game. But next week we're gonna get even more down. I'm excited.
And we didn't. We 3-phased Yogg, but we realized what went wrong. Like we could have 2-phased Yogg, right?
Yeah.
Because
we needed people in the brain room before Hero gets popped up top.
Yeah, that was something we found out because there was like a couple people in, we popped it, and only me and the other person in there got it or something like that. And so we got it down to like 34%. We probably could have stayed in and not suicided it, but we probably could have played chicken and won, as Kabosh said.
I mean, we could have overlapped heroes, I think, too. If we had just communicated better, I think like a different shaman could have pressed hero when you guys got into the
But no, because they get the debuff, even if it doesn't activate on them.
Debuff still?
Yeah. Because that's what was happening.
That.
Yeah, so they get the debuff, so they can't get heroism again.
You're right.
And it was the same thing that was happening when they were popping it underneath, not in the brain room, and we were getting the debuff but not getting it. And then we did it another time and we got it and we were like, wait, what's happening? Like,
yeah, that's tough. So. Luckily, I don't think only at the end did anyone get MC'd. I had an insane run that proved to me that it is just RNG for the most part. I had 100 for like the entire time up top. I was like, this is clearly just an RNG thing up here because I don't have to do anything. I didn't get mallied, I didn't get zapped. I was just hanging out up there.
Dude, I got
and
lower.
And then there's other times where it's like, I'm at like 36 and we're just now going into like.
I got lower than I had ever gotten at 18. But I mean, honestly, as melee, like you can just straight up not take any in the last phase. You face the other direction and you just kill the ads. I mean, if you're killing the ads fast enough, right? you can turn. Yeah. But I mean, there's really, you don't have to. Like, you're not doing that much to the boss when you turn for a few seconds. But we also had like for some reason he wasn't doing the move you have to turn away from. That was some good RNG.
Twice.
Yeah,
he did it like twice the entire third phase, which was very.
Oh my God, our locks were so excited.
And our mage was so super excited. Our mage was eating it up.
Maybe that's too. LZ was the one that was.
Yeah, and normally it's like tight for us, but we were just like laughing and chatting during the last phase. It was so easy because the gaze wasn't coming out. Just having a good old time. I like Yogg 1 now. At first it was pretty rough, but now it's like I think it's good.
People aren't running into as many clouds.
Okay, well, I was gonna say phase 1 is the only time that things can go wrong, but I feel like the sanity and like going down to the brain rooms and stuff like that, we've got down on lock pretty well. You guys like held back so we could kill tentacles up top before pushing it and stuff. Like I feel like we've got that stuff pretty down pat.
I figured out.
Well, and I always thought that you went in order. I never paid attention. I thought you went in order of what brain room you would get, and I was like, well, we have more time on the second one always, and our raid lead pointed out, he was like, I think that's just us not doing it right. But then we did get a different one, and we were in there super early, the first one, and I was just like, oh, because those rooms are definitely different. Like, because if I could go to the one with like the 3 right next to each other, I could pop 2 fan of them knives and almost take out a third of the total the a third of the total tentacles, and so fast.
Yep. No, yeah. Normally, our big problem is just people not getting down into portals on the first portal. Like, it's actually insane. And I remember saying before when we were like struggling sometimes, like that will be the game changer for us because we usually have like 3 or 4 portals up for like 10 seconds and
right,
where people just are not going down, or like they get constricted and they don't go down, or their brain linked and they, instead of going down, they're like running to their partner. There's all kinds of stuff like that. But now that people are sending it down there, we can easily 2-phase with that hero. And then no one really has sanity issues if that happens.
And it's crazy that in the 10-mans in some of the groups we're down to one phasing the brain, the first time we go down, which just makes the fight infinitely easier. Yeah. So I'm wondering if I'm assuming that the top guilds are just one phasing 25 now, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure the top ones, but it is still, I think for most guilds 2 is the sweet spot. We'd have to be doing a lot more damage to be phasing.
Agreed.
But yeah, was there anything else? I mean, yeah, we did a real good job. Like we flew through. We did all of the hard modes we normally do. Flew through that.
Razors. We killed some dwarves on razor scale.
We did. Fun. Yeah, some of the achievement there. Yeah, because we left those till the end, and then we were like, well, we have extra time, so just do some of that.
Almost no reason not to leave them to the end at this point. Because I mean, even if people need something from it, it's still more valuable to spend the time progging and dropping it just in case. Because the gear can't be. I mean, there's no hard mode gear on them.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was our week. I think we did pretty darn good, and we're gonna do really well next week. Assuming everyone shows up.
I know.
Looks around.
I'm always nervous before the start of raids. I'm just like, but people usually do the absent thing pretty well, but I just always have that feeling someone's not going to show up.
Yeah, and we
more
do
so for the weekend raid.
We have some really great backup players right now. Who can pop in, but if someone's going to be absent on Thursday when we already did some of the work on Tuesday, it makes life a little more challenging.
Yeah, that's fair.
You don't want to waste someone's lockout, or like you don't want to pull someone in.
Granted, Thursday this week would have pretty much been the entirety of Old One.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, true.
But a lot of people.
Yeah, it would have just been XT and Flame Levy that they missed. That is funny. Oh yeah, I got the other BIS. Well, the BIS daggers for assassination are the same. I'm the only rogue in the raid, so now I have those. The offhand is BIS for combat, so that's good. But like, I'm just sitting there with these two daggers, like. I wish we had another assassination rogue.
I know we're getting the wrong stuff. My best ones drop off Freya too, so give them to me.
Oh man, but yeah,
I want my staff to drop.
Where's that from?
Now I forget. Every time we pass it though, I'm really upset. But it's off Hodir Hardmode.
Oh well, yeah.
I know.
But is it Hodir 10 hard or Hodir 25 hard?
Oh, 25.
25. Bummer.
Hopefully next week. I need the shield from 10-man tonight, though, so get your butts in gear tonight.
My BIS is from Algalon 25-man, so if we could get on top of that, that would really...
We don't talk about that here.
That would help me out.
Soon. We got plenty of time. It feels like this raid's been going on for a long time, but we're only in the 5th week.
Yeah, 5th week.
But it's because we've been doing it with, us doing it with multiple characters and 10-mans. It feels like we've been in Oldar for a long time now, but it's still pretty early. So we'll get it. We'll get it done. But that's gonna probably end out here, unless anybody else has any closing remarks. All right. Well, Yip, tell them where they can find you.
Hi, you can find me on YouTube and Twitter at TheYipShow, or on Yippidin or Yipbot on Benediction, I think is where we are.
Awesome.
I think so.
All right. We're going to send you back to the regular show. Bye.
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 Time for the news. All right, so it's not a ton of news this week. There's some Activision Blizzard news, but we cover the game, so we're not really going to cover that, guys. Like, I mean, a lot of people like to talk about it and complain and everything else, but we stick to the game and stuff that we like. So I'm sorry if you wanted to hear about that, but plenty of other places will cover it. So we're just going to talk about one little piece of news, and that's the bug fixes. And this first one here, Mel will be very excited for. Fixed an issue causing vehicles in Ulduar to sometimes spin infinitely.
Listen, when you're a shooter and your vehicle's just going, no. Nope.
Yeah, that's. I've been a gunner before and experienced that bug, and it's like you're not accomplishing anything when that's going on. And I've also been a driver, and then like my passenger goes like, "Simon, stop spinning."
Yep.
And I'm like, I'm not, and I got video proof.
Thank God we streamed too.
Around.
I had two different people tell me, if you keep spinning, Bob, I am going to kill you. And I'm like, dude, look at my stream right now. I am standing still. It is a bug. But like, imagine the guilds starting out that didn't, like, nobody was streaming, and like one dude said in the like raid lead, dude, Tim will just not stop spinning. This is such bullshit. Then the raid lead's looking, he's like, I don't see him spinning. He's like, can you not see that? Like, I'm sure it caused all kinds of weird interactions in different groups.
I could see, like, on my screen, it looked like you were spinning too, and I wasn't your gunner. I was another
Oh, really?
gunner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I don't know.
Yeah, that was a weird one. I'm glad they got it fixed, but it definitely probably made for some funny interactions in raids.
Probably broke up a lot of guilds.
And it's just the worst, man. I leveled a rogue to 80 so I could play a rogue, not so I could play a siege demolisher.
Yeah, but at least, well, so I get to go in the demo on almost like most of the time. So that's pretty fun, but I don't know about the other jobs. I don't know how fun that is, like, but I'm assuming it's not very fun.
I think being a demolisher driver is not fun.
I've done that a couple times. That was not
That's
fun.
the demo. That's what you do every time, Bob.
No. Oh, no, sorry.
The demolisher driver.
The siege tank. I don't like that. The demolisher driver I love. Like you're like, I just love being one of the ones that has to do the the most important job for the raid, I guess.
It is the most important one and the most difficult, I'd say, to get right. But I don't like it because, like, it's so reliant on the other people in your team doing things right. Like, if your passenger loads at the wrong or unexpected time, you might drop your pyrite stacks because it disabled your pyrite ability. If your gunner isn't, or your passenger isn't picking up pyrite, you're having trouble, like they're not sprinting at the right times, and you stay in an ice block, or you can't get through some fire, boss gets there's so many things of doing the demolisher driver role properly that rely on other people also doing their job perfectly, that it's like I don't like that. I want my execution of my job to be reliant on me.
Yeah that is definitely can be frustrating, and that's why that fight really, like, on easy mode is just a silly fight. But on hard mode, it really is one of those ones that requires everybody to understand how it works so that they can fulfill their job. And it takes some communication. But luckily for me, the two guys that I get that get assigned to my demo each week are really, really good, and they're smart. They know exactly what to do. They, so it's been real good. And then they'll let me know, they're like, all right, gonna load now. I've been very, very lucky there. So, but I can imagine if you don't have that, how frustrating it can be. But yeah, that boss. I just hate, and you're gonna have to teach me this because I saw you do it in stream, but I didn't write it down. Like, I just hate that boss because it screws up logs. I want to look at my logs, and it just makes it hard to look at logs. And you had some sort of command to take him out, and yeah.
Do you want to full screen me? I can show you.
Here,
I've got a
I don't have
here.
I don't have a setting to put you at full screen, but we can see that will be pretty hard. But the majority the majority of people that listen to this are on audio, so just say it out would probably be the best.
Yeah, sure. So at the top of the page here, there's this little box that says Filter Express, and you're just in the encounters right here, and you type into here encounter ID space != space 744. And you see how there's this big blue line that says Salvage Demolisher that's just completely skewing the damage chart from everyone else. Well, then you filter with this, you press enter, and the Demolisher is gone. What that's doing is it's filtering out the Flame Leviathan encounter, which is encounter ID number 744.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. But I'll put that in the show notes, guys, so that you can see that afterwards. That's awesome. Yeah, okay, so then the other hot fix, and now they don't put in what changes happened, but the following items have received adjustments to their bonuses to be in line with other Ulduar item buffs. Comet's Trail, Dark Matter, Meteorite Crystal, and Sigil of the Vengeful Heart. Now, I looked on Wowhead, and I don't know if they're showing me the new or the old stats, but do you know much about this?
I do know about this, and it is
because you just got
fairly
dark
complicated. There's a couple phases to it. So, like, before Ulduar came out, if y'all remember, Blizzard was talking about buffing the item level of a lot of the Ulduar loot, and their goal was to keep it more relevant once Trial of the Crusader was out, okay? So, like, the original game files had low item level, Ulduar loot, lower than we have now. So then they did, like, a first pass, they buffed everything, they forgot to buff the Algalon stuff appropriately. Maybe they buffed it and didn't buff it as much as they meant to.
They forgot to buff hunter weapons, like ranged weapons too.
And then they did another pass where they buffed the items again, and they buffed all the so now all the Algalon stuff is correct. But what happened, what they'd missed at that point, which is what this fix is talking about, is the spell effect on those trinkets, the proc, rather than the passive stats, was not buffed up in accordance with the item level buff and the passive stats. So the effect of the proc was still at a older value, a lower item level value. And I don't know, maybe it's just not a high priority, but people identified this, and people were like, hey, this Comet's Trail, this Dark Matter, this is the same proc value as when it was an item level 230 trinket. This is probably not right. So eventually they got around and now have updated those, making all of these items stronger by just a little bit. The Dark Matter on a rogue was 15 DPS better on a character that is doing 9,000 DPS. It's not really making a noticeable difference, but now the values are in line with what they should be for the item levels. And I can't speak to the exact values for the
that was what I was
meteorite, whatever. I only know the rogue ones, the Comet's Trail and the Dark Matter.
Gotcha. Yeah, Mel's gonna hate me for bringing this up, but I love it because that was my idea that I mentioned on the show a good 2 months prior to them saying they thought about the changes to Ulduar items. Now, my idea was to nerf the items from TOC and ICC, making content harder. but making the Ulduar loot more in line and, good. Yeah. But in that same episode, I was like, if you don't like that, maybe just buff the Ulduar loot. That wouldn't bother me either. And it was so funny because everybody hated my take on that. So
look, no one likes nerfs. Everyone likes buffs. Even if it's like an equivalent, change, it's always perceived better if it's a buff.
Yep. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Oh, with those trinkets, with all those switches, there was one other thing that was kind of related, but it was super annoying. At one point, they had the tooltip of the trinket saying one value, and then if you actually acquired the trinket and you actually moused over the buff you got and looked at your character pane, it was giving the higher value, but the tooltip said a lower value. It's these items are doing more than they actually said in the game. So they needed to line up the tooltips with the spell effects, and then they also needed to get the spell effect up to the proper level that it was supposed to be.
Oh, wow.
I had that with my Blood of the Old God, which was a Yogg-Saron trinket. It said 1284 attack power, but then you go and get the proc and it's 1350 attack power. It's this is better. I'm getting this. Okay. I know it's better.
I have got that trinket. Love it.
Yeah.
I don't have dark matter though.
Everything is all in line how it's supposed to be now. Tooltips are matching spell effects, are matching item levels that they're supposed to be.
Awesome. Well, good. Guys, that's all we got for the news. So let's head into
Bobby, we need to have a talk about this World of Warcraft Classic. Do I look like I know what a WoW token is?
That's why that voicemail was so funny, because we've had that bumper forever. But this week's discussion is rogue talk. So if you're not into rogues, you might not be into this, but I would say stick around, because the more you know about other classes, there's always things that you could do better if you know how other classes work. That's just the way it is. So we're going to talk, we'll just talk about some of the differences, strengths, and weaknesses between combat and assassination. And then we'll kind of dive into both of the two different specs. Not going to hit on subtlety. I don't even know if you PvP much.
No, but there's some talk of using subtlety for Algalon trying to survive the Big Bang effect.
Ah, cool.
I did hear that.
A very niche application.
All right, well, we can hit that at the end then. Okay, cool. All right, sure. Let's start off with combat versus assassination and
real specs. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, and let's just give us a little overview of what some of the strengths and weaknesses are for each of them.
Yeah, so let's start with combat, because that's the one that's it's less, a little bit less raw damage output, considering equal gear between the two. You're going to provide a very valuable debuff for your raid, which is the 4% physical damage increase debuff as a combat rogue. And the only other class that applies that is an arms warrior. And well, it's pretty obvious arms warriors are significantly worse in individual output than combat rogues. Okay. Combat rogues may not be quite at the level of assassination in terms of individual output, but that debuff is very valuable.
Yeah, especially in 25-man raids.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, the bigger the raid, the more raw damage you're gaining from something like that, for sure. And then another difference is definitely the gameplay, I would say. Combat is generally trying to juggle more things at once, has more impactful cooldowns compared to assassination. Combat is juggling at least two buffs at a time with your slice and dice and your rupture, and you may also be tasked with applying the major armor debuff in your raid, which would be expose armor. So sometimes you're juggling 3 different abilities, and you're having random resource generation through your combat potency and your ruthlessness combo points. So playing combat rogue and doing it well really keeps you on your toes, and I'd say it's much more difficult to perform well as a combat rogue versus assassination.
Also, and then, a lot of, I mean, if you're doing it min-max, I don't know about, I'm sure, okay, never mind. I do know this about you, but if you're doing it min-maxy, you're swapping out glyphs quite often too, depending on the fight. Like, you're not going to parse on Ariaya, whatever you say her name, without glyph of fan of knives, you know? So like, there's a lot of swapping out, and on certain bosses, it is really nice for you to be doing the armor pen, and if you're exposing armor, you're really shooting yourself in the foot if you don't have that glyph, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And please, and if I'm ever wrong, please correct me. You know, I don't care.
No, you're right on target with this. Anytime that you're applying exposed armor as a combat rogue, you really want to have that glyph. Like, it's going to be a DPS loss for you anyways, but having that glyph makes it significantly less of a DPS loss.
Yeah, it's huge.
And, you know, depending on if you're, you know, trying to expose armor, or maybe you're trying to do AoE damage on Oriaya or Kolagarn, or like the fight is good for killing spree, like Thorum is fine for killing spree, but Iron Council is not really that good for killing spree. It makes the glyph of killing spree either completely useless or very good.
Or Kolagarn, where it is literally completely, it's just an inactive ability.
Yes. The ability just, I mean, you can make it'll killing spree the rubble that spawns after you kill one of the arms, but that's not, like, you just don't press killing spree on Kolagarn. Yeah.
Dude, and it pisses me off too, because back in original Wrath, I can't remember which one it was. I'm pretty sure it just only would work on Kolagarn, which was fine because you had Blade Fury active when you would hit it. So like, but it just doesn't, like, they couldn't figure out how to get it to work this time around. I think before they just made it so it did it in front. It's so weird, but yeah, you just can't use it. But sorry.
So like a lot of the glyph choices for combat are variable from fight to fight, whether you're doing exposed armor, also whether you're like trying to score a high individual parse on Warcraft logs versus trying to be a valuable team player. Like, if you're trying to be a valuable team player, you might take glyph of Tricks of the Trade is very valuable. It's contributing a lot of damage to your raid. It's just contributing damage that isn't attributed to your individual score on Warcraft logs. So people interested in that wouldn't be interested in that glyph. So there's so many different situations. And I kind of thought about this for a while. It's like, oh my God, this is such a headache, because people keep asking me, what glyphs do I go on combat? And what I did is I made a little glyph recommendation wizard. It asks you 5 questions about what you're doing.
That was really cool.
Are you a team player? Do you care about AoE, like damage? Do you do you need to reduce damage by using feint, like you do on Algalon and some other fights that have really heavy AoE? You just put a yes or a no on each of those questions, and it spits out, like, it has in the back end. I've like looked at every combination. I'm like, okay, this glyphs, this glyph, and it spits out the glyph recommendation. And this is like the only way I could conceive of to actually recommend glyphs for combat players. Because like, if I just do it assuming like, well, what I'm prioritizing, then the person asking the question might be like, yeah, well, I really care about my Warcraft logs parse, and your Tricks of the Trade glyph recommendation, I don't care about that. I don't care about being a team player. I just want to parse. And then I'm like, okay, well,
so
yeah,
if you want to know what your rogue is like, see if they have the Tricks of the Trade glyph, right? I'm just saying.
Yeah. Almost always. Well, I don't know if that's true, but usually a combat rogue that's trying to optimize for the team is going to have a spot for Tricks of the Trade glyph. If you're making them do expose armor and killing spree is good on that fight, they are gaining more damage from having those other glyphs, but they should still be casting Tricks of the Trade. That's the real clear message of like, if they're casting Tricks of the Trade on cooldown on a damage dealer, then they're being a team player there.
Well, sure. And we don't have a ton of like really short fights in Old War, but in Nax, Adrenaline Rush was really good for extremely short fights, like, and it's crazy. And even, I know you hate it, but I love it for the same reason that you hate it. The glyph of Sinister Strike. I love it because it does make it more complicated, and you can screw up more. And you can screw up more, but also if you do it well, you can also get some pretty good bumps. Yeah. So
yep.
So yeah, there's a lot of choices there, which I don't know. I love the difficulty of combat, but at the same time, I run assassination now in 10 mans, and that's really fun too.
Yeah, dude, it's just simple, man. It's mutilates and envenoms and top of the meter.
It does suck though to run assassination if you're running a 10-man and there's no warrior. That kind of sucks doing armor pen. Like, yeah. And then you're also most of the time having to do all of your own bleeds. But here, we can talk about that in the assassination part because.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, the main difference is combat is like you're juggling more stuff. You're dealing with cooldowns that you want to time and they're actually impactful, whereas the assassination cooldowns are just not so impactful. And you're providing that 4% physical damage. So almost every raid is going to want to have at least one combat rogue. Combat is, I would say, probably just more raw damage output on Kolagarn and Oriaya. Those are ones that are very like in line with the strengths of combat in terms of they are generally shorter fights, they are multi-target fights, and you can really exploit the power of Blade Flurry plus Adrenaline plus Fan of Knives on those fights. Every other fight, I'm pretty sure like the raw damage output just goes to the Assassin Rogue. But ultimately, like I'm saying these things about these talent specs in general, but what you've got to think about is like, well, what actual weapons do you have on your character? Because like if you've got really good combat weapons and your assassination weapons are kind of lackluster, like the difference between the specs like theoretically kind of goes out the window. You pick the spec, like if you're trying to optimize your individual output, you pick the spec that you have better weapons for, and that's going to be more damage.
Well, and I think also, I think 10 mans are crazy because like, for instance, on 10-man Freya hard mode, I'm definitely like, say I need to do crippling, like maybe I could put it on the Fellow Striker and have it, swap out when I'm doing crippling on the one mobs, but maybe I just want to go combat and just have crippling on the offhand because like in that fight, honestly, your raw damage really isn't that important. It's more your utility, and you're trying to take down the 3 mobs. Like Blade Fury is really great. You have a bunch of different tools to work with, and as an assassination rogue, taking out either of the 2 deadly or instant poisons can be brutal to damage. Yeah. I mean, either of them is just basically breaks it.
Assassination relies so much more on its poisons as a portion of its damage than combat does, so it's much more punishing and much more of a DPS loss for an assassination rogue to swap into like crippling poison, like you said, or there's a handful of fights that want a mortal strike debuff, a healing debuff. So
yep, I do that a lot on Freya too.
Yeah, rogue doing wound poison and like just the wound poison swap. I've run these numbers in an effort to try to convince my hunters to take aim shot. For a combat rogue, it's like a 7 to 8% loss to run wound poison over instant poison. That might sound like a lot. For an assassination rogue, it's like 15 to 16%. It's like well over 1,000 DPS lost to run that wound poison. And like if you're the only person to do it, then yeah, it's still worth it. Like the effective damage through the like healing reduction, it's still a worthwhile thing if you're trying to be a team player. But holy crap, anyone else who can do that is better suited than making an assassination rogue take their instant poison off and do wound poison. And actually anyone else who can do that other than the combat rogue too. I mean, 7 to 8% is still a pretty huge loss.
Yeah, and if you look at assassination rogue's boss fight, you're gonna see that the biggest percent of damage when you look at the different breakdowns is instant poison. But you have to remember that you can't do the rotation properly without deadly poison. And your deadly poison's proccing that instant poison quite often, you know, and people might not think about that if they don't play rogue, you know.
Yeah, the assassination build is really like the poison build. You have these two poisons that are very powerful, deadly poison and instant poison. Deadly poison is the one that stacks up on the target, and then a new change, like deadly poison's always existed, but a new change with Wrath of the Lich King is that once deadly poison is at 5 stacks, when it triggers again, it refreshes the stack and it gives you a guaranteed trigger of your other weapon's poison. So actually, more of your instant poison triggers come from deadly poison forcing the trigger than the instant poison weapon itself. And that interaction between the two poisons is super duper powerful. And then like your ability usage of like casting Envenom all the time is upping your poison trigger chance as well.
And refreshing Slice and Dice, which is huge.
Yep. Yeah, so yeah, we could talk a little more about the strength of Assassination Rogue. And I think the main thing to consider about Assassination Rogue is it is much simpler to execute the ability rotation for an Assassination Rogue to, you know, a very high level than it is for combat. A lot more players are going to be able to be successful and be like, you know, peak performance with an assassination rogue than with a combat rogue, because the combat you're just juggling so many more things. It's so much more difficult.
Which is another reason why I love it.
Yeah. So the assassination rogue, you know, you're using double daggers, you're using assassination, you know, talent specs. You're usually refreshing Hunger for Blood, which is like once every 60 seconds. It's not really part of the rotation. It's kind of just a buff you put up every once in a while. But assassination rogues are very, very strong single target damage. In fact, the most recent like rankings of classes from Warcraft logs that was posted to the front page of Wowhead.
We're number one, baby.
Assassination rogues, number one, baby.
Number one, baby. Suck it, Warlocks.
Everyone was like, oh, guys, Warlock going to be so good in Ulduar. We got to stack all the Warlocks. Warlock's the best class, dude. I was so vindicated when I saw that come out. And that little yellow bar above all the purple bars. Oh, felt good.
Yep, giving you an E fist bump right there.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
So I very much like the more chill gameplay of Assassination. You don't really have as many impactful cooldowns. Your Vanish does turn into somewhat of a DPS cooldown because it gives you your Overkill buff again, which is 60 energy over the course of 20 seconds. And you have your Cold Blood that guarantees a critical strike. You usually want to use that on a 4 or 5 point Envenom. But other than that, like, you're just doing your rotation over and over. And what I like so much about that is the rotation being simple means I can pay attention to my character's movement. I can pay attention to the fight mechanics. I can devote so much more attention to executing those things that are, frankly, a lot more important than worrying about, you know, keeping track of 3 different debuffs and this and that and, you know, all this other stuff on combat, which Bob seems to love. To me, that is stress.
I just love it because there's more bragging rights for that, and I just like to be challenged. And it was what I played back in the day, and that's also why I went combat right off the bat. Is I knew it wasn't even going to be close in Nax. It was a lot closer than I actually thought it was going to be, but I just wanted to do the practice. So when we got to Ulduar, I looked good, you know, and it has paid off now. Like, so, you know, I do have a question about the whole Vanish thing, because as combat, I only do that Like if I'm having aggro problems or something of that nature, I really don't mess with it at all. But I have found, I've been playing for the last couple of weeks assassination in 10-mans and stuff, and I don't know if I'm doing it right, but basically when the buff runs out early in the fight, I'll go ahead. Once I've done my full venom, I will pool energy. Then I will go ahead, vanish, do another bleed, then be able to do like usually another venom and get right back into my rotation. But the reason I do it is because, I'm trixing a DPS. So it just, instead of being 2 or 3 on the aggro table, it just takes me down to nothing. And then I don't even, that's one less thing I have to worry about throughout the fight. But I don't know if it's actually a DPS gain to be doing that.
When you time your vanish is, in terms of the DPS output, is something that it's like, you can nitpick that and you can like figure out a super optimal time. But ultimately, as long as you use it and get the 60 energy at some point in the fight, it's not going to make that big of a difference.
Unless like razor scale, like your video showed, like where vanish can actually get you out of getting pushed back. Those are neat tips right there.
Yeah, so there's something that's been true about vanish since Classic's inception all the way back at level 60 is when you vanish, you get some kind of like special super immunity that like
for like
it's stronger than Mage Ice Block, it's stronger than Paladin Bubble. Like you can negate mechanics that those immunities cannot. However, it's not really like described in the ability description. People don't really know about it. It's a very small timing window where you have this immunity. But you can use it to do crazy things like when Makesna does web spray over the entire raid. If you time your vanish properly, you don't get stunned and you get to keep attacking.
I never knew that. Damn, I missed out on that one.
Web spray is one, and like Bob, when he brought it up, mentioned razor scale when they do the knockback, the wing buffet attack. If you vanish in roughly the last 3/10 of a second, like you can get the cast bar to display, and you can see if you've got a cast bar add-on that's showing you like seconds. I usually try to hit it at 0.3 seconds on that cast bar, and then you're immune when the knockback happens and you don't get pushed away from the boss. And well, if you do get pushed away from the boss, you're losing 4, 5, maybe 6 seconds before you can get back to the boss, which is a lot of damage. If you're doing 8,000 or 9,000 damage per second, 5 seconds, well, that's 40,000 damage. That's a pretty big deal, timing that properly. And you can do a similar timing with Oriaya's Fear ability. And you can do this assassination or combat. This is applicable to both. In fact, like,
it's just like that's one of the things in assassination I would argue is harder because you're always going to have it most of the time on combat. Whereas if it is a DPS, that's why I was asking. If it is a DPS upgrade for the fight, you want to do it at least once, right? So now your timing on it on certain fights matters big time, whereas
big impact on the fights where you're using it to negate some kind of relevant fight mechanic. And you can really use it to become immune to almost anything in the game. Like if you wanted to stand in a frost bomb on Mimiron, I don't really advise this, or stand in a shock blast on Mimiron, and you were really confident in your vanish timing, more power to you. Don't run out for the shock blast. Just vanish it. Be a pro gamer. But don't come crying to me when your guild leader gets mad because you died 4 times in a row on Mimiron shock blast, one of the easiest mechanics to avoid possible, and get benched from the raid.
Yep. Chat's asking if you could vanish the Big Bang on Algalon.
Yes and no. This was put to the test because people were like, you can vanish anything. Well, you can vanish it and you won't take damage from the Big Bang. But the way the Algalon mechanic works is that he needs to have someone on his threat table at all times. And when you vanish, you temporarily drop off of his threat table, and the rest of the raid is in the black holes, so they aren't on the threat table either. So then Algalon does his ascend to the heavens thing and just bugs out. Not bugged, but leaves. So you can successfully vanish the Big Bang and survive it that way, but he's going to immediately after ascend to the heavens and game over.
Oh man, that's horrible. Okay.
But maybe on the topic of Big Bang, we could talk about the subtlety spec.
Sure, yeah.
I always like trying to do little weird things, but subtlety has a talent called Cheat Death. Which is it's similar to the Paladin's Ardent Defender. You probably are, more people are probably familiar with Ardent Defender than Cheat Death. It's just whenever you would receive damage that would kill you, instead you go to 10% health, and the damage is completely negated. Doesn't matter how much damage it was. If it would kill you, instead you go to 10% health, and then this ability has a 60-second cooldown. It's just a passive that's always active if you've got it talented.
I mean, anybody who PvP'd against a rogue in TBC is going to remember Cheat Death and how they hated it.
PvPers know Cheat Death as well. That is a common one in PvP. So yeah, I mean, basically the idea is
the first thing we need to do is give rogues a Cheat Death in PvP. Come on. That was ridiculous.
So you just, build a subtlety spec, and like instead of prioritizing like PvP talents that are really good in PvP, kind of take all the ones that are, trying to optimize some kind of PvE damage output with this spec that is very rarely used in PvE seriously. But, if your raid doesn't have anyone else who can manage the Big Bang ability, you need someone to manage the Big Bang ability. And this is a very safe strat. It's going to work every time. You can also, it's like a DPS loss compared to being
more about
assassination or
this,
combat.
because we're going to be doing Algalon, and I'm going to be on a rogue tomorrow night. So definitely talk more about this, so I can maybe do this.
Yeah, sure. So like, if you're progressing on Algalon, I would recommend doing the safe strat, taking a subtlety build, and it's like you take a hit to your individual damage, but it's very easy to survive Big Bang every time. You're very reliable at that. And that the safety is super valuable, especially when you're progressing on Algalon, because it allows the rest of your raid to get deeper into each of these attempts. And maybe you find that, okay, your raid DPS isn't quite there, but you survived 6 minutes of Algalon mechanics at that point. You've learned a lot. The other strategy, once you're a little bit more comfortable with the fight, is to have either a standard combat or standard assassination, and you go and you take the glyph of Cloak of Shadows, which makes your Cloak of Shadows ability give you a 40% physical damage reduction. And then you combine, Cloak of Shadows with the glyph being 40% reduction. You use your Feint ability, which is a 50% reduction, and then you've got to give yourself somehow about 32,000 health. And then you'll be able to survive in 10-man. The 25-man version, this strategy doesn't work. It's cheat death or bust. But for the 10-man, you can also do it this way. And this is generally a lesser DPS loss than doing a subtlety specialization. And it's a little bit riskier. If you're not topped off in health, you're going to die and then your group wipes. But if all goes according to plan, it's a higher DPS way to handle that Big Bang ability.
Okay, well, this is 10-man we're doing tomorrow, so...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean what I did when I was doing my first 10-man attempts is, like, I had my assassination rogue, I had a glyph of Cloak of Shadows in my bag. That's all I would need for the assassination spec. So I, did that, and I was like, okay, guys, if there's any problem with executing this, I'll just switch to the super safe subtlety spec, and we'll keep going with that. But for my group, the assassination build with Cloak of Shadows, we were able to execute that just fine. That relied on having good healers that were able to give me a priest shield every time on Big Bang, and that can help count up to that 32,000 number that you need to survive. If you didn't have a priest shield, you'd have to like get a stamina flask and maybe a bunch of stamina gear, and then you're taking a pretty big DPS loss equipping all that stuff anyways.
Right.
Okay, cool. All right, that gives. I'll definitely be looking into that more tomorrow before we do that. Cool.
Yeah,
Oh.
I can hit you up with a link of the like specialization, the like subtlety builds and stuff like that.
Please, thank you, and I can put that in the show notes too for anybody else that wants to use that.
Oh, for sure.
Awesome. All right, well, okay, so let's talk about assassination, like stat prios, like what you prio. I mean, spoiler, attack power, but like let's hit more like the soft caps and things you need to think about as far as hit, expertise, and those types of deals.
Yeah, sure thing. So the main one you want to worry about is your hit chance, and you want to be sure you can reach your poison hit cap, which is actually a spell hit cap, not a physical hit cap. So a lot of players will make the mistake. They'll look on their character pane and they'll look at the little melee tab and it'll say like melee chance to hit, and your hit rating converts to physical melee hit chance differently than it converts to spell hit chance. So you actually have to look at your spell tab, and you want this to get up to 17%. To make sure your poisons are never resisted by bosses. And assassination is the poison spec. It's very important that these are always landing. So if you're below this poison cap, it's very important to gear, gem hit or make some gear swaps to get up to that. It's almost always a good idea to be there. 17% is the number. If you've got like, you almost always have precision talent that takes 5. So then you only need 12 from gear. If you've got a Boomkin or Shadow Priest, I can't remember if any other classes do it. They give a debuff that increases chance to hit with spells. That's another 3%. And if you're playing the best faction, Alliance, and you have Drain Eyes in your party, they're giving you another 1%. So you almost always have precision. Then you maybe have 3 more. You usually have 3 more from a Shadow Priest or Boomkin, and then maybe you have 1 more from being Alliance. That makes up 9 of the 17, which leaves you with only needing 8% from gear usually. Or sometimes, depending on the group, you might need a little bit more, which, hang on, let me check a chart really quick. That would be about... If you've got the Drain Eye and you've got the hit buff and you've got the precision talent, you're only talking about needing 210 hit rating. Now, the thing that a lot of players, another mistake a lot of players make is they say like, oh, I've got my, 210 or 2 whatever it is without, I'll get this, without the heroic presence is what most of the inferior horde players are probably concerned about, would be 237 hit rating on your character. They're like, okay, I've got this much hit, and then they avoid hit like the plague. They're like, oh no, this new piece of armor has a bunch of more hit chance on it. And they're like, I can't equip it. I'm already over the hit cap. And for rogues, that's not really how it works. Your hit cap you really care about is the poison hit cap, but when you gain more hit chance over that cap, it still increases the frequency that your auto attacks land on the target. And, well, frankly, your auto attacks can trigger more poisons. They're very valuable. The value of the hit stat just is less when you're over that poison hit cap, which is a really important mark to make. So, like, a lot of people will ask me, like, Simon, why does your rogue have 450 hit rating? Like, that's so much. Aren't you way over cap? I was like, nah. No, this is fine. Like, I'm not gemming for any additional hit, and these are just like all the highest item level things with the most stats that I have, and it happens to be like 450 hit rating, which is totally fine and good.
You're muted, Bob.
Yeah, so like a lot of people just don't understand like the difference between dual wield and single wield. Like if you're an arms warrior, going over 8% hit, melee hit is a complete waste because you're not actually getting anything from it. Mm-hmm. Same with Hunter. Like going over is just not cool. But as a rogue, as long as you're not going over, I believe it's either 23 or 26% chance to miss with white hits.
It's like 700 hit rating. You're almost never going to have to worry about that.
Yeah, so as long as you don't go over, you're still getting something from it. It's just other stats become more priority rather. And then there's also arguments for combat rogues because of the energy gain from that offhand hit. There's also arguments about it just like go ahead and stack whatever you want. So
yeah, absolutely. Like I just make sure I'm above that poison hit cap, and then I don't care beyond that. Like I just put, whatever. Whether I'm at 400, 500, like it's fine. Like as long as I'm equipping the items that have the most stats on them. Usually, like outside of a couple of these, like a couple important stat caps you want to hit, you usually are just looking for the items that have the most stats rather than items that have particular stats. Because all these stats tend to add to your damage output. And having more is usually better than having particular ones.
I have been wondering about something recently, but I'm going to hit it in Combat Rogue. It does have to do with hit rating, and I'm sure you can guess it because it has to do with spec and stuff. So, but I'm going to hit that later.
Two more stats I want to talk about on assassination.
Awesome.
The next is expertise. Expertise is very valuable for assassination rogue, and you need a lot more of it as assassination rogue than you do as combat. Combat gets that juicy 10 expertise talent. Expertise is kind of a confusing stat to deal with. On the items, you have items that give you expertise rating, and then your expertise rating converts into expertise points. And each expertise point reduces the chance that all your attacks are dodged or parried by 1/4%. And the cap on this is 6.5%, which equates to 26 expertise points, which is 214 expertise rating.
So I have to hit this with both my rogue and my prot warrior. It seems like each 16 gem equates to like basically 0.25. Is that about right? Or is it 0.5?
No, the 0.5% conversion is
not point.
8.19 expertise rating, a little more than 8, equates to 1 expertise point. That then reduces your chance for your attacks to be dodged by 0.25%. And expertise works a little bit differently than all your other stats. Because you can only get expertise in full point increments. What that means is,
I thought they changed that. Oh no, the expertise
supposed to be changed in Wrath. There's like patch notes that saying it should be, but it isn't.
Not the that's why this stat is so confusing. Not the percentage chance to like negate, dodge, or parry, but the expertise point itself being converted from rating. Because there's 3 numbers there, right?
Yep. There's your expertise rating that then converts to expertise points, and the expertise points convert to some amount of reduced chance to have your attacks dodged or parried.
It's very confusing.
And the problem going from rating to points is that the rating only provides benefit in full point increments. So if you crap. It's hard for me to come up with an example. One moment. I have a good example. I just have to find it. I have the numbers written in the Wowhead post that I wrote about these stats. I came up with a good example of the numbers. Basically, your expertise is going to round down. Because you're going to be some amount over the literal, the individual point increment. And I'm just going to take a moment, pull this up because it's a good example and it is good for teaching.
No problem.
Almost there. Okay, so if you currently have 0 expertise rating, you have no expertise, and then you equip an item that says 40 expertise rating, that would grant 4.9 expertise points according to the conversion from rating to points. But we only get benefit in full point increments. So your 40 expertise rating says 4.9 points. That gets rounded down to 4 points. which is the same benefit as if you only gained 33 expertise rating from that item. So you're effectively wasting 7 expertise rating in that setup. So you have these weird kind of breakpoints where, like, sometimes it's great to equip that, you know, extra gem and make that extra expertise point, or sometimes you equip it and you're 7 over, and that's like not as good. But I try to keep it very simple. I think, like, even if a spreadsheet or simulator tool tells you that not capping expertise might be a small DPS gain, I will almost always cap expertise on all my characters. It doesn't matter if I'm 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 over. I want to be expertise capped because I feel like it makes I'm pretty likely to make a mistake if it's like very rare for my attack to get dodged, but then it sometimes does. I will usually sequence my abilities wrong when that dodge actually occurs. So I'm like not so concerned about how much a spreadsheet or simulator tool will tell me like I DPS gain for not capping. I like always just want to cap expertise so I can execute my abilities confidently, knowing I'm not going to have to like make a sudden change because one got dodged, and have some kind of user error like that.
And just for anybody who's new to just Classic or anything, a common misconception, maybe it's not as common now, but even if you're behind the boss, they still dodge. So just heads up.
Yes. Yeah, so your melee attacks, if you attack from the front of an enemy, they can be dodged and they can be parried.
Yep.
But if you attack from the behind the enemy, they cannot be parried, but they can still be dodged. So that expertise is helpful.
That's just a good tip for new people because it's not said anywhere.
Definitely. Yeah, it's one of those things you like. Maybe you pick it up after 6 months of playing. Maybe you don't. Maybe no one told you. So that is a good thing to point out. And assassination, unlike combat, the abilities you use are much more impactful. Kind of the whole point of the spec is that Mutilate is really good at converting energy into damage, and Envenom is really good at converting combo points and energy into damage. Combat is more like damage from its auto attacks and damage from its cooldowns,
and keeping everything up.
Less damage from its Sinister Strike and Rupture. So like making sure those abilities always land is very impactful for assassination. And then the last stat I want to talk about for assassination is armor penetration. Armor penetration is one that don't.
No, I was
talk
just
about it later. Okay.
No. I was saying I don't think you want it for assassination, whereas I do think it's pretty beneficial for combat.
Yeah. So assassination deals around like 55 to 60% of its damage as magical damage through deadly poison, envenom, and instant poison. And armor penetration only increases your physical damage output. You still do, 40 to 45% of your damage as physical, but it's a much less valuable stat as assassination than it is as combat. That doesn't mean, don't equip anything that has armor penetration, but know that that's generally a lower value stat. Like,
don't equip Grim Toll.
Yeah, Grim Toll's not a good one for assassination.
Yeah, I can say that. I currently use it on combat. I don't use it on assassination at all.
That's smart. So it's like some of your best in slot gear as assassination, like those leg guards of Cunning Deception from Yogg Saron, they have a fat amount of armor penetration on them. And the reason they're good is just they have way more stats than any other option.
3 gem slots. So
and 3 gem slots. Like they're just loaded. So it's like, they've got armor penetration. Yeah, armor penetration isn't exactly your favorite, but they're still the best thing. So that'll come up. But a lot of cases you tend to avoid the armor penetration as a less valuable stat as an assassination rogue.
Yep. Yeah, it's a lot of people ask about the problem from switching to both specs, especially with the expertise. Some different people were asking me that just last night, and it clicked when you talked about the different the talent in combat, which I had just forgotten was something that I take, you know?
Yeah. So when you're switching from assassin to combat, the gearing is, for one, you have different weapons. You have very different, the daggers, like one fast dagger is pretty good for combat, but you need a nice slow main hand that you're not going to be using as an assassination rogue. So you need different weapons, and you want to have armor that has roughly 82 less expertise rating on it, which is quite a bit. That's going to require replacements of gear or swaps of gems. It's actually kind of difficult to switch your gear around from a combat setup to an assassination setup, because you have this talent in combat called weapon expertise, I think it's called. I mean, of course they had to call it expertise to make it even more confusing. The talent, whatever. It gives you 10 expertise points.
Yep. Which is a lot of rating.
If you back convert it to rating, that's roughly 82 rating worth of expertise. And expertise, unlike hit, it's you go over that cap, you gain nothing. So it's very much wasted. And this is one of your most powerful point for point talents in the combat tree. You very much want to utilize this talent. And if your gear just has so much expertise on it that you can't utilize it, well, that's not good, and it makes your combat perform much worse.
Yep.
So you don't want to be going you want to get up to that cap, and you don't want to go over.
So then would you say once you have those caps, number one, attack power, because of the way it converts into poison damage, right?
Once you've got your poison hit cap, which is the same for combat, same for assassination, it's still very important for combat. You've got your expertise cap. It's slightly less important for combat than it is for assassination.
Oh no, yeah, I
still recommend.
I was still talking about assassination. Sorry, I didn't clarify that.
Oh yeah.
Just your most important stat once you've hit those caps on assassination.
You've got your expertise cap. You're usually gemming for attack power.
Okay,
because you're choosing. In gems, you can talk about these stats very plainly because you get to choose exactly what you want, and you know exactly the proportions of each stat you're trading for. 32 attack power or 16 agility or 16 crit rating. And it's all of our simulation and spreadsheet tools tell us, okay, yeah, the 2-to-1 attack power, attack power is the way to go there. But when you're talking about choosing individual items, well, you're not making such a straight up comparison. You might be trading, some amount of agility and some different amount of agility here, maybe a gem slot on that one, some crit rating on this one, and this one's got haste rating instead. It's a much more complicated comparison. And in that case, I'd go back to what I said earlier. You usually choose the item that has more stats rather than the item with particular stats.
And you have a really good spreadsheet, which I'll put in the links in the chat too, that just allows you to swap items out and just see the change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ever since level 60 Classic, I've been working on a spreadsheet tool. I've made one for each expansion for estimating rogues' damage output. You input your talents, your gear, your buffs, your enchants, and that stuff, and it has a whole lot of back-end calculation to try to give you a reasonable estimate. It's maybe not so much that the estimate is going to be exactly what you do in game, but it's internally consistent. It's very good at telling you what's going to be better and what's going to be worse.
Okay.
Go ahead. That advanced mathematics and all the work I've put into that is where a lot of my recommendations for gearing this way versus that way come from. It's I know how the spreadsheet works. I know it's got a few quirks where it doesn't quite handle some things correctly, but I know when it's telling me this in this situation, that is almost certainly right.
Awesome. Well, the last thing, we went over the rotation, I think pretty well.
Yeah, we did talk about that.
But for assassination, the last thing I'll just kind of ask you, because weapon combos, I've got them on here, but it's really 2 daggers. And it did in Dax, it was you wanted a heavy dagger for your offhand, right? But now you're the blade twister's so good that those 2 are just your 2 bists, even though they're both fast. Is that the reason?
I've got a dagger chart as well, like the combat chart you have linked. I can post a sharing link for that.
Awesome.
Jeez. Whatever. I'll figure out the sharing link later.
Yeah, I can stick it in chat.
There's a lot more than just the weapon speed that goes into determining what the best weapons are, or what the weapons among the weapons you have, which ones you should use. And in the first phase, essentially, we had a slow dagger that was way higher item level than anything else you could access. The Sinister Revenge from Kel'Thuzad was a 226 item level, high weapon DPS. It happened to be a slow dagger. And the highest item level fast dagger we had access to was Webbed Death, which was 213, way lower weapon DPS. But it was a fast dagger. Okay, great. So in this case, you always want one fast dagger. And that's the dagger that you put your deadly poison on. And that usually goes in your main hand. And then for your second dagger, it can be fast or slow. It kind of doesn't matter. You just pick the highest DPS option you have. And if you're choosing between two equal item level daggers for that, second dagger that the speed doesn't matter, you tend to pick the faster one. But it's this heuristic of use double fast or use fast and slow. It kind of misses the bigger picture, and there's a lot more going on than just the weapon speed when you're choosing your weapons. You've got a really high item level slow dagger, you're going to want to use it. Like we did in phase 1 with the Sinister Revenge Web Death setup. And now, like you said, we want to be using double Blade Twister, and that's not because any kind of math or understanding of rogues has changed from phase 1 to phase 2. It's just that the best weapons that are available happen to be that, the double Blade Twister works out to be the best. Because there's Blade Twister, that's a very fast dagger, that's 252 item level, and there's Fang of Oblivion is the highest item level slow dagger. That's also 252. And so it's the same item level, the fast, and the highest item level fast is the same as the highest item level slow, which is not the case that we had in phase 1.
Gotcha.
So
okay.
Here in phase 2, it's just okay, well, all of our options are the same item level, have roughly the same amount of stats. Yeah, we pick the double fast in this situation. But I really like to say you pick double Blade Twister rather than pick double fast, because people tend to extrapolate from when I would say pick double fast, they tend to extrapolate from that into situations where that doesn't really apply.
Okay. Yeah, the question I wanted to ask about rotation was just when you have to do, because to put up Hunger for Blood, you have to have at least a bleed on the target for a short time. Well, I was in a 10-man raid, didn't have anybody bleeding, and so I had to, every minute I had to somehow put that up. So I was able to just save, Vanish to, open back up with Garrote, to do it after the first minute. But, it was a pain in the butt because I was doing Armor Pen during that. And I was just wondering, there's never a case where you don't want to at least put that little one combo point bleed on to get your Hunger for Blood back up, right?
Right. Rupture is not a spell you're generally casting because you want to cast it. It's a spell you're casting because you want to enable your Hunger for Blood. If you've got that glyph, that's 8% increased damage for 60 seconds. That's pretty valuable. That's going to amount to a huge amount of damage. So it's definitely worthwhile. If I was in a 10-man raid where no one else was applying bleeds, I would be frustrated. But how I would open is I would sprint up. I'd be stealthed at the start, but then as soon as the boss is pulled, I'd unstealth and I'd sprint to the boss. I don't think opening with Garrote is a good idea. It takes way too much time to move up in stealth and position behind the boss. I don't like generally using stealth openers. So stay stealth so you get your overkill, but then as soon as it's pulled, unstealth, sprint to the boss, mutilate, slice and dice. Then you either got a ruthlessness point from the slice and dice or you didn't. If you didn't get a point, you do a mutilate. If you did get a point, you do a rupture. And it's either rupture or mutilate rupture. Yep. Then you've got your bleed up. You can put up your Hunger for Blood. We're putting up the slice and dice first because that is a much bigger, more impactful buff than the Hunger for Blood. Hunger for Blood's still good, but it's no 40% melee haste. Let's be real.
Yep.
So yeah, it's mutilate, slice, then possibly mutilate, rupture, hunger for blood, and then you're into your basic, loop of envenoms that automatically refresh your slice and dice and give you a bunch of poison procs, and you're all good from there on out. And if you really wanted to, you could save your vanish at that point because you're already positioned behind the boss. You could save your vanish, and it's like your hunger for blood's falling off. You could do vanish Garrote to get that bleed up. Or you just try to look for an opportunity where you've scored a ruthlessness point off your last finisher, do a nice little 1-point rupture, and get that hunger for blood refreshed.
Awesome. We've got Mel. Feels like how I felt when we were doing the Geordie Priest episode.
Oh, no.
I'm just listening, knowing I'll never play a rogue.
Oh, sad. Never say never. All right, well.
It's not for me.
We are running. We have got about a half an hour left because we do have to get to raid. So I want to make sure we hit on combat. So stat prios.
Come on,
are
this is
the
just selfish for Bob, right? Bob just wants to make sure that he gets to ask his questions about combat.
Combat's awesome. Okay.
Listen. I'll just take care of this real quick. Poison hit cap's the same. Armor penetration it's good. It's not like something you're super prioritize. Well, okay. I can't help myself. I have to get into some detail. Hit cap is the same, though. It's the same thing as assassination. It's very important, and it's the same values, everything. Expertise, your expertise cap is going to be like 82 points lower than it was as assassination. So you're looking at about like 130 something. I think it's 132. I've got it right here. 132, yes. And then if you have a racial bonus, like humans get a bonus with swords, orcs get a bonus with fist weapons, you really only care about your main hand expertise. And if you're utilizing one of those racial bonuses, it drops your, the amount of expertise rating you need from gear even lower. A big problem with gearing combat rogues is most of the good gear has expertise on it, and you actually just end up with way more expertise than you need, which locks you out from utilizing some of those best pieces.
It's rough.
It's rough. A lot of people talk about armor penetration, and they're like,
I am one of those that's obsessed with it.
Obsessed with this idea of like, the more armor penetration you have, the better it is. Oh, you've got to get to armor penetration cap. They say, oh, your damage will explode once you get armor penetration. Like it's some magical thing, and it's like, settle down. It's not.
It was like kind of magical back in the day during Old War. But I believe that was because the poison change towards the end of Wrath had not been reworked yet. So
certainly
your percentage damage was a lot higher from sources, melee, whereas now poisons were really like got hooked up towards the. It was, I don't know if it's late TOC or during ICC, but poisons got hooked up at some point there.
Yeah, when you increase the value of those poisons from that buff at whatever time it did occur, that shifts your damage much more towards magical damage than physical damage, and in turn makes the armor penetration stat weaker. Now, for assassination, we had like a huge amount of our damage coming from magical. As combat, we still have about 30 to 35% of the damage being damage that doesn't benefit from armor penetration, but that's way less. Way less that doesn't, that's a confusing way to say it, way less of the damage that doesn't benefit from armor penetration compared to assassination. So a lot more of your damage as combat benefits from armor penetration, making it a much more attractive stat. And it is true that the more armor penetration you have, the more value you gain per point of armor penetration. But this is one thing that I think is like super, super exaggerated. Like the total change in the value per point from going from 0 to literally armor pen capped is like 30 or 40% per point. It's like, you're not doubling the value of it. You're not tripling the value of it. You're not even getting a 50% increase of the value per point. Settle down.
It's like hard to explain because it's going backwards from other stats, whereas usually the higher stats you get diminishing returns.
Diminishing returns, yep.
But with armor
based on armor
pen,
penetration,
because armor gets diminishing returns, the higher it is, a percentage point down, the lower you get, if this makes sense, the lower you get means more percentage damage you're doing. It's so hard to explain. Like, for instance, if you were to take, let's just do it real simple. If a target has 10,000 armor and another target has 2,000 armor, if you were to take off 2,000 armor, you're doing a significant amount more damage to them than if you were to take off 2,000 armor from 10. Because as you go up, see, I'm just screwing this up. As you go up in armor, like you just get less and less damage negated. It's so hard to explain. But as a tank, you can see as you put on more armor, you're just like, okay, this doesn't do crap now. But as a clothy, you put on, a piece, like you can see a significant difference because your armor's so much lower. It's so bad to explain.
Yeah, the percentage mitigation changes much more rapidly when you're at low armor values than it does when you're at high armor values.
A much better way to say it.
However, your armor penetration stat reduces the target's armor by a percentage. So, like, when the target has less armor, your armor penetration is reducing less raw armor. And when it has more armor, the target has more armor, your armor penetration, same amount of armor penetration stat is reducing more raw armor. It's very confusing, and I feel like it's not actually that valuable to get into the weeds of the mathematics of
the
armor
only
value,
time
physical mitigation, and how armor penetration interacts with that. But I think a good way to summarize it is when you're talking about gearing armor penetration on your character, like you're choosing between, say, an attack power gem or an armor penetration gem, that's a pretty clear comparison you can make. Essentially, the attack power gem is a flat increase to your damage output. Like, it's going to make your sinister strikes hit harder by this much. It's going to make your auto attacks hit harder by this much. It's also going to boost your poisons. And the armor penetration gem is going to be a percentage increase. And a percentage increase is going to be different based on how much damage you're already dealing. So essentially, you need to get a lot of stats and a lot of gear to already be dealing a lot of damage.
And already be getting diminishing returns on the other stats, right?
To some extent, but essentially you want your physical damage output to be high enough that the percentage gain from gemming armor penetration is bigger than the flat gain from gemming attack power. And that just happens, roughly around Ice Crown Citadel gear level. That's the point where you're going to want to actually just gem towards your armor penetration cap. And prior to that gear level, it's like, armor penetration is good. It's a good stat, but it's not something you're like intentionally stacking up to the cap. As far as we can tell from all of our spreadsheets and simulation tools, like, it really is up to Ice Crown Citadel where that stat becomes good. If you try to build a armor set that stacks armor penetration, say in like Trial of the Crusader, it's just like the character's damage output just isn't there yet. And these all simulate and estimate at just less damage than a setup that is gemming for attack power and prioritizing just gaining more stats on each item rather than prioritizing armor penetration. Does that make sense, kind of?
Yeah, and it's still also, there's a big difference in armor penetration if you're using a trinket like Grim Toll or those I'm using Grim Toll currently, like, as one of my trinkets. And like, I did do a test 1 week. I was just like, I'll just gem all armor pen and just see what happens. Well, it was significantly higher. Like, I've since changed back because, like, I just don't want everybody to, it seems like I'm like over here trying to tell people, but I think the only reason it was good was because of using Grim Toll, if that makes sense. And then another thing is you want to make sure you don't, if you are using one of those trinkets, you don't go over the cap when that trinket's active. So there's a lot that goes into it. That's just like, it's hard. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it's a stat everybody should be doing. And I really don't think you should be doing it on the rogue unless you're utilizing one of those two trinkets. But
yeah, certainly, like, you're going to get more bang for your buck with armor penetration the more you have on it. So, like, if you've got that Mjolnir Runestone or that Grim Toll, the presence of that, gives you more armor penetration and makes gemming armor penetration slightly more attractive. I don't know. It's good.
I think you're still right though. Like I just want to test it because I don't see anybody in the high end ever testing it out, and they just go by Sims, and I just thought it was a neat thing to test out. But there's no way to say that just because there could have been all kinds of I'm not even sure I had the same buffs. You know what I mean? Going from week to week. Like there's so much that goes into it. Yeah, I tried it once, so there's no way I could say, "Oh, I was right," because of that, right? It's just
but it's like in the theory crafting community, we try to be as consistent with our results as we can, but sometimes we make mistakes, and people trying things out and sometimes having an unexpected result, then that's an interesting thing to look at. And
it's just a weird stat. It's just a weird stat.
A really, really good raid with your armor penetration setup, that might be an interesting thing to look at. We'll maybe dig into a little more detail and be like, okay, well, were there more buffs? Were kill times faster? And you kind of go down a list of possibilities. And then maybe the kill times were all the same. Maybe the buffs were all the same. And we kind of measure and say okay, well, what factor is left that explains this difference? Was it just crit RNG? Was it this? And then sometimes, the theory crafting community is wrong. And we have this case example and we're like, okay, well, maybe we need to reevaluate some of this stuff.
See, and you can do that. I do not have the capacity to do that or the background in stats you do. So I'm just saying as a request, not now, but towards the end of Ulduar, I would love you to test out an armor pen gemmed, like all your armor pen good items. I'm not saying go below, stay in the top 3 best, but I'd love to see you do a raid towards the end, just trying it out, and then you analyze it, because I would love to see the results of that. Huh? Yeah, I would love it.
Yeah, look, I'm swimming in GTK P Gold. I can regem a character if I want to.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It is after I did it and then switched back, I was like, well, that was 3K. Okay.
Those Scarlet Rubies, they ain't cheap.
Yeah, I was just like, okay, well, I'm not going to do that again until somebody like Simonize does actually prove it. So
yeah.
All right, well, cool. So now the last thing that I want to talk about with combat, because I think we were sporadic, but we did cover, keeping slice and dice up, keeping armor pen if you need to, we didn't say you want to keep rupture up.
Armor sometimes, glyph differences.
Yeah, we covered a lot of it. But I want to talk about these other rogue specs, because I had thought about this in my head. I was like, what if I were to have enough hit on my gear? And because your specs are different though. But I thought in my head, what if I took out points in the hit rating stat and then just had both fist and sword spec and get the extra hit on the fist weapon from the offhand sword procs? But you actually have some of those build. You didn't take it out of the hit category. Yeah.
Fist and sword. When I had initially done talent specs for Ulduar, I didn't think these would be that relevant. But then I did, further analysis of like the weapon up. Frankly, I got a sword offhand that was good, and I got a fist main hand that was good, and I'm like, damn, I'm in this situation now. I took a little bit closer look at it, and yeah, there's actually a lot of combinations that are pretty competitive that involve two different weapon setups. The best setup is still matching, you know, your Golden Serenite Dragon and your Blade Twister and close quarters combat talent, but
and then like I think the third best setup, which I love to see, was the two swords, because I feel sword spec is, and this is just a feeling, I have no data, but I feel like sword spec is better if you have equal weapons. Like, and that chart kind of shows it with those two swords being the third.
Yes. In a vacuum, if you had weapons that were, you know, the exact same stats and the exact same speeds, and the only difference was one said sword and the other said fist or dagger, the swords would be ahead. But it's kind of like the situation with the daggers. We don't get to choose out of a vacuum. We get to choose from the actual items that are available, and oftentimes, you know, one of the items is just stronger than the other options, and that outweighs this smaller difference of like which weapon type it is.
Yep.
But what you were saying about dropping points out of the hit talent, I'd usually recommend dropping points out of the aggression talent as a less that's one of the like less impactful talents in the talent tree to pick up that secondary specialization. Your hit, even if you're like over that poison hit cap, is still
your white damage is still
increasing your auto attacks.
Because is it like Sinister Strike your third highest damage ability underneath instant poison?
I mean,
is that right?
It is. It's probably, yeah. Sinister Strike is probably third highest. You've got like melee and instant poison being number 1 and 2, and then Sinister Strike. But Sinister Strike, even though it's third highest, it's still a pretty small percentage of your damage. My thing's got it estimated at about 16% of your damage. Whereas poisons make up 30% and auto attacks make up about 42% roughly. So it's still kind of small. Like your point for point aggression is just like not super valuable. But there's actually a kind of cool thing with how the sword specialization talent works. Whenever you get an extra attack, whether it's sword specialization or any other effect that gives you an extra attack, it doesn't matter what attack generated it. It will always give you an extra weapon hit with your main hand weapon. So you've got this super fast offhand sword like Void Saber or Rune Etched Nightblade. And then you've got this big beefy slow main hand, either like a Cerulus sword or maybe a Golden Serenite Dragon or Masticator, and you're doing a hybrid spec. Those sword hits from the offhand that generate extra hits are getting extra hits with your giant main hand. Pretty big damage. That's a really nice interaction. And if you're doing that hybrid spec, your main hand is a fist weapon, and that main hand extra hit, well, it gets the 5% crit bonus because it's hitting with the fist weapon. Yep. So that's actually a pretty nice interaction there.
Yeah, I just thought it was really cool because after you rated me last night, some of your viewers showed it to me.
They were good.
And I was just like, this is what me and my friend were talking about the other day. Yeah, it wasn't exactly what you had made, but we were talking about having, you know, the two things and like using different mismatched weapons. So I thought it was just a really cool thing. I think a lot of people aren't thinking outside of the box there. And you're right, like these hard mode weapons, like, you know, I've been really lucky, but I mean, lots of people aren't, you know, so.
Right. You don't always just automatically get the best in slot weapons, you know. You're going to have to work with what you've got, and that involves a lot of, you know, figuring out what the best setup could be. So the most recent chart I made for combat, is the second version of this chart I made. The first chart, I just did only matched weapon types, right? Like fist and dagger, sword and sword, mace and mace. And because I thought in my head, I was like, these hybrid specs, they're probably not, like, they're probably like somewhat relevant, but do I really want to add like 2,000 extra comparisons into this chart. It's way too much work. I'm not going to do it. And then, so I made the first chart. And then the second chart I made when I was like, okay, actually, these like hybrid specializations, like they're coming up as the best option that people have available to them much more often than I thought they would. So then I had to do a whole bunch of work. It was super annoying. But I've got Excel like mostly automated. The most recent chart involves a comparison of over 3,000 different weapon combinations and talent combinations to then generate this this recommendation list.
Yep, and you can we'll have the list in, but if you make a copy, you can just put in a one where on any of the weapons you have, and it'll just tell you your best set, so you don't have to search down to see what your best is.
Yeah, so there's like a big chart that's all the different weapon combinations, and then for each weapon combination, it tells you the best talent using those weapons. And then it's got another tab, which is probably the most useful tab on the chart, where it just has a list of the weapons, and you input a 1 if you have the weapon and a 0 if you don't. And then it searches through the chart for all the weapon combinations that you actually have access to, and then lists the top 10 alongside the spec and the like estimated damage output of those combinations.
It's super cool.
That's something that's really easy. Like when you're in a raid, you can pull it up quick, and it's like, oh crap, a combatant's boot blade just dropped. Is that better than my void saber? Is it better? Would I switch over this combination? You just put the 1 in combatant's boot blade, and like your other things are, already in there, and it's like updates the list pretty quickly.
It's so awesome. All right, well, we're run out of time. Is there anything else you want to hit on Rogue before we go?
Rogue's number 1.
Hell yeah.
Assassination rogues, outdamaging warlocks. Let's remember that, how everyone thought warlocks were the best, and now rogues are the best. Let's keep that in mind.
Yep.
And also, we appreciate our healers who keep us alive to be able to do all of that. That's a very important part of the team. It just doesn't get measured on the damage meter.
Yep. And all of you rogues there, be nice to your heals and use Fate when you should be using Fate.
Yes. Feint is so good in Ulduar. I've got it on all my rogues, combat or assassination. I glyph of Feint, and I press Feint like all the time. That damage reduction is super duper valuable because so many bosses have big AoE damage on the raid. Help your healers out, they'll help you out, I'm sure.
Yep. It also procs your poisons too, so.
Yes. That's a bug,
PvE rogues aren't as bad.
That's a bug.
PvP rogues is where the real hatred comes from, right?
I think so. I don't delve into that too often, but I did do a arena stream during season 1 of Wrath where I got 3 rogues together, and then this is actually brilliant.
No.
We got 3 rogues together, and then I got a DBM timer to tick down 5 seconds until pull. And then when that hit 0, we would all shadow step ambush into cold blood eviscerate. And we kill people in 2 globals. Like they will, from one to the next, they have 1 chance to press Divine Shield. And if they don't press it, or they press some other button, they're dead. Oh, it was hilarious.
Oh, I bet you pissed some people off.
Yeah. How many people actually got the win
setup? And like the rogues are very coordinated. Like the time from our first ambush to our second ambush is like half a second. Like we got pretty good at coordinating that. Gives the opponent a very, very small time window to press the correct button, have the correct reaction. And if they do press Divine Shield, well, we usually just leave the arena at that point because the game's over. Often enough, they don't react fast enough, and we get a free kill, and we move on with our lives.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
Oh, see, this is why rogues are awful.
I'll give you that one. That was a pretty diabolical and probably unfun for the opponent arena composition.
You understand the hate.
I understand. I can imagine what being on the other end of that would be like.
All right. Well, guys, we're going to go ahead and close out. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at WC Reloaded. You follow the Mash Those Buttons Network at the Mash Network. we want your WoW stories, or if you need to tell us anything, the email is wcrpodcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to join the MASH Discord and interact with the host of this show or any of the shows on the network, it's mash.gg/Discord. I'm sorry, I'm still working on our Discord. I'll get it done at some point, guys. And yeah, how can you help the podcast? Just tell everybody in your raid about it. Tell, people in general chat, tell people in BGs, give us ratings and reviews on both Spotify and iTunes. You can help the YouTube grow by liking, subscribing, and hitting the bell. That one's getting okay following at the moment, so help us grow there. That one's really hard to grow podcasts on, especially if you don't do smaller content as well. So help us there, and yeah, Patreon at patreon.com/Warcraft Reloaded, and you can also buy guides at Rested XP. That is warcraftreloaded.com/RestedXP. Use code RELOADED. Oh, all right. I hate that part of the podcast. We can't find Mel anywhere because she doesn't have social media. So where can we find you, Simonize?
You can find me at my YouTube channel is at SimonizeShow, and my Twitch handle is the same, twitch.tv/SimonizeShow. Those are my two main platforms, and a lot of my extra content, like the spreadsheet I talked about and the weapon charts that I talked about, you can find those through my Discord, and we'll have links to the Discord in the description. Yep. I don't have a fancy Discord title like discord.gg/SimonizeShow. I got to work on that. I think I can make that happen, but it's some long string of characters that won't go well over audio. So just check the video description, the podcast description. It'll be in there.
What is it? There's a discord.gg is their actual Discord, but I forget what it is.
Me or something.
Yeah, you could actually just, if you own the Discord server, they give you the link, but it's just a different dot, 2 letters. I forget what it is, but you should definitely check into that because it's completely free. It works pretty good.
Wonderful.
But it'll all be in the. Yeah, it'll all be in the description here. And his Discord is arguably the best over the actual Rogue Discord. So a lot of times people just think his Discord is the Rogue Discord. So
I try to put a lot of work into it and have it be more than just like a dump for all my content. There's a lot of frequently asked questions type of sections of like, oh, Simon, why are you raiding with the Vigor spec? And there's a big couple paragraphs explaining why, or like, what weapons should I use? And it links you to this nice chart that I have, and really good resource for learning a lot of things about rogues, or I would like to think so.
Definitely. So check that out. You can find me on Twitter at Blazin_Bob. That's BLAZZIN_BOB. You can find me streaming, not at Simonize level, but it's, it's more, actually it's not even more comedy because Simonize is more funny, but it is comical. So definitely check it out at twitch.tv/BlazinBob. Let's get out of here, guys.
I like your streams. I check them out every once in a while. I'm not a big Twitch viewer, but I like the chill energy you got going on.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's get out of here, guys. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Simon.
Well, I was happy to be here the first time. I'm happy to be here the second time. Love coming on, Blazin' Bob. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. We will see you guys later. Thank you very much for checking out Warcraft Reloaded podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss any future content.